Chapter 1171. In the spacious square, the white jade floor was emitting a faint light. That young man stood straight with a smile on his face. His tone was casual, slightly dragging out the end of his words, which made him look especially lazy. If one only looked at his current expression, one would think that he was gently whispering something. Who would have thought that he was ruthlessly stepping on another person under his feet? Arrogant, bold. Everyone who saw this scene could not help but have such thoughts in their hearts. This young man looked docile and harmless, but in fact, he was not to be trifled with. Lu Yintong never thought that even after she had sternly warned him, the other party still did not take it seriously. He even publicly humiliated Lu Ziyan. This foot seemed to be stepping on Lu Ziyan, but in fact, it was targeted at her. She was so angry that her chest violently heaved up and down. She could not help but raise her voice and become a little sharp. Chuyu, in the academy, you better restrain yourself. After confirming that Lu Ziyan's hand bones were almost broken, Chu Luiyue lifted his foot. Lu Ziyan was in so much pain that he could not shout. He could only curl up on the ground and tremble violently. He could not describe the feeling just now. He really wanted to kill him. Moreover, for some unknown reason, this person had an indescribable aura that made people not dare to underestimate him. In fact, when he restrained his expression, people would unconsciously submit to him. He had been stepped on without being able to struggle and resist. On one hand, it was because he was injured. On the other hand, it was because of Chu Yu's astonishing aura. Chu Luiyue glanced at Lu Ziyan and retracted his gaze with satisfaction. He smiled and said, Senior Lu, I don't understand what you're saying. I've only been in the academy for 11 days. And I was even locked in Pengmin Mountain for 10 days. How can I not know how to restrain myself? You. Lu Yintong gritted her teeth. This Chu Yu was not only arrogant and impudent, he was also sharp-tongued. Lu Ziyan only came to exchange pointers with you, and you put him in such a situation. I don't know Lu Ziyan. It's strange that he suddenly came to find me, isn't it? Not to mention, in order to exchange pointers with me, he purposely waited at my residence for a long time. Chu Luiyue's smile deepened as she said meaningfully, I really don't know what kind of power I, a new student who just entered the academy, have to make senior brother Lu so stubborn just to fight with me? Everyone turned to look at Lu Yintong. In fact, Chu Luiyue's words were already very clear. Lu Zi, and purposely found trouble with her because of Lu Yintong's instructions. As for the reason, it was naturally because she had lost to a new junior brother on Thousand Wine Mountain. In any case, he was still a genius ranked high on the Azure Sky rankings. Coupled with the fact that he was used to acting ostentatiously, it was inevitable that he would be arrogant and willful. How could Lu Yintong let this go? It was actually very understandable for him to do such a thing. However, she did not expect that the final outcome would be like this. Not only did Lu Ziyan fail to teach Chu Luiyue a lesson, but she also made her lose face. The way some people looked at Lu Yintong gradually changed. He took the initiative to compete with others, but he was not convinced after losing. He even deliberately used such methods to bully others behind their backs. Wasn't he too narrow-minded? She only dared to bully Chu Yu because he was a new student and did not have any background. If it was someone stronger than her or someone with a strong background, she would definitely have a different reaction. Lu Yintong felt as if there was a blade at her back. The surrounding people's gazes made her feel extremely pressured. She could not stay any longer, and finally could not help but sneer. So, now you admit that you're deliberately taking revenge? Chu Luiyue smiled faintly. Senior Sister Lu, you're exaggerating when you say that I'm taking revenge. I'm just an ordinary student. I came to Lingxiao College just to improve my cultivation. I don't have any other intentions. It's just that if people don't offend me, I won't offend them. If people offend me, I can't be a pushover. Don't you think so? Lu Yintong clenched her teeth. This time, seeing that Senior Sister Lu is here personally, I'll let it go. Chu Luiyue glanced at Lu Zi, and who was lying on the ground. Senior brother Lu, when you go back, you must recuperate well. When I'm free, I'll visit you again. Lu Ziyan shuddered. He did not need Chu Ning to visit him. He did not want to see this person again in the future. He stood up with difficulty and limped away. Originally, his body had suffered heavy injuries, so he couldn't stand up. However, probably because he wanted to get away from Chu Liyue too much, he gritted his teeth and held on. When he walked to Lu Yintong, he lowered his head in shame. Lu Yintong gave him an extremely cold warning look and reprimanded him in a very low voice. Useless thing. Lu Xian's body stiffened and his head lowered even more. Needless to say, his life at Lu Yintong's place would not be easy in the future. Lu Yintong suddenly took a step forward. He's no match for you. Then what about me? Everyone quieted down. Lu Yintong was going to fight with Chu Yu. Many people, including Zhong Sun, were worried. Even if Chu Yu could defeat Lu Xian, he was definitely not Lu Yintong's opponent now. If the two of them really fought, Chu Yu was afraid. Just as Chu Liyue was thinking about how to answer, a familiar voice suddenly came from the side. Lu Yintong, isn't it a little shameful for you to fight with a junior who just came to the academy? Chu Liyue looked towards the source of the voice and was a little surprised. The one who spoke was actually Luo Yanlin. Strange, wasn't he hostile towards me before? Why did he take the initiative to help me now? When Lu Yintong saw that the person who spoke was Luo Yanlin, a trace of surprise flashed across her face, and a little fear appeared in her eyes. The other party's strength was far higher than hers. She did not want to offend him easily. Since Luo Yanlin spoke, it meant that he was on Chu Yu's side today. Lu Yintong weighed in her heart for a moment, and decided to give up. Senior brother Luo is right. She forced a smile on her face. I also saw Xian in this state, and was anxious for a moment. Forget it. Since senior brother Luo is here, then today's matter, let's forget about it. Lu Yintong took a deep look at Chu Liyue one last time. Chu Yu, I look forward to seeing you enter the Azure Sky role as soon as possible. At that time, we will officially compete. After saying that, she turned and left. Lu Zi, and followed behind with difficulty and slow movements. A few people beside him came forward to help him. However, before she could take 2 steps, Chu Liyue's voice came from behind her. Senior sister Lu, wait. Lu Yintong turned back and frowned. Chu Liyue suddenly laughed. Senior sister Lu, did you forget something? Lu Yintong's frown deepened. Chu Liyue patiently reminded her. There seems to be one more thing that hasn't been fulfilled from our bet that day. Senior sister Lu, don't you remember? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1172. Even if Lu Yintong didn't look for her, she would still go to her. She had finally won the bet, so she couldn't give up. Lu Yintong's face turned pale. Of course I didn't. Going to Thousand Wine Mountain for a month and asking for the best spot. To her, this was not something that could be easily accomplished. She thought that Chu Yu would be more restrained after being locked up in Min Mountain. She didn't expect him to be even more reckless. Then I'll have to trouble senior sister Lu to send me to the top of Thousand Wine Mountain every day for the next month. Chu Liyue's next sentence made Lu Yintong even angrier. What did you say? You want me to send you there personally? Senior sister Lu, why are you so surprised? Chu Liyue raised his eyebrows slightly. I only said that because I heard that the spot isn't fixed, and we have to go there every day. If senior sister Lu doesn't go with me, how can I get the spot next to the spring? Don't you think so? Lu Yintong's chest heaved up and down violently. Senior sister Lu, the bet is set. Are you not willing? Chu Liyue seemed to have noticed something and asked carefully. Lu Yintong was so angry that she laughed. Okay. Since you said so, I'll accompany you to the end. Don't you want to go to Thousand Wine Mountain? I'll go with you every day for the next month. She wanted to see what kind of tricks this Chu Yu could still play. Lu Yintong turned around and left angrily. Her footsteps were much faster than before. The crowd quickly made way for her. After Lu Yintong's figure disappeared, many people turned around and looked at Chu Liyue with admiration. TSK, could it be that this Chu Yu really went all out? From now on, he had completely fallen out with Lu Yintong, right? He was really courageous. Chu Liyue didn't seem to notice those people's gazes. He tidied his clothes and walked down from the square. Zhong Sun quickly walked up to him. Junior brother Chu Yu. Seeing his slightly worried face, Chu Liyue smiled and comforted him. Senior brother Zhongsun, don't worry. I know what to do. Looking at the young man's firm and indifferent eyes, Zhongsun suddenly felt that he seemed to be much more mature and calm than he had imagined. Even she couldn't guess what he was thinking. He could only nod. Anyway, she was the one who started it, so you can't be blamed for it. Moreover, if she really wants to do something, Elder Wanzheng probably won't agree to it. As the only disciple that Elder Wanzheng had accepted in the past few years, even an idiot would know that Elder Wanzheng would definitely dote on him, and would not allow him to be bullied. At this moment, another voice came from the side. Your boxing is not bad. Chu Liyue and Zhongsun turned around to look, and saw that Luo Yinlin and the others had unknowingly arrived. It was Luo Yinlin who spoke. He looked at Chu Liyue from head to toe, and his eyes flashed. Early stage 7th order. Your strength doesn't seem like it. Chu Liyue smiled, and chose a euphemistic way of saying it. I'm more durable. That was true. After fighting with those puppets, her resistance might not even be comparable to a 8th order warrior, let alone someone of the same level. Of course, it was the same when fighting others. Every punch hit the flesh. It was all thanks to Dabao that she was able to win this match so easily today. Thinking of this, Chu Liyue suddenly frowned. Dabao said that he would wait for her in the academy, but there was no movement until now. She didn't know if he was in the academy now, or why he hadn't come to find her. Chu Yu, what's wrong with you? Seeing that Chu Liyue was a little absent-minded, Luo Shishir couldn't help but ask. Chu Liyue came back to her senses and shook her head. Nothing, just a sudden fight, and I'm a little tired. Everyone. You've been winning from the beginning to the end, and you didn't suffer any injuries, so why are you tired? Luo Yinlin suddenly said. You seem to be quite talented in martial arts. If you have time, ask the elders and cultivate well, maybe it's not bad. If this Chu Yu was really only at the early stage of the 7th order, then the fact that he could defeat Lu Zi, and so easily, was enough to prove his talent. Even if his current realm wasn't high, but in the future, maybe it was limitless. Chu Liyue's lips curled up slightly. Thank you for your advice, senior brother Luo. In addition, today's matter can be considered as owing senior brother Luo a favor. If there is a chance in the future, Chu Yu will definitely repay it. Luo Yinlin admired Chu Liyue even more in his heart. The reason why he spoke was not entirely to help Chu Yu, but the other party took the initiative to accept his favor, which was indeed smart and righteous. It's just a matter of a sentence. I don't need you to repay anything. After all, you are Shishir's friend, so this small matter is not worth mentioning. In the future, cultivate well, and get on the Azure Cloud list as soon as possible. Then you won't be bullied like this. Chu Liyue's expression was slightly restrained as she nodded seriously. Alright, since this matter is over, you all should go back and have a good rest. Chu Yu. Before Luo Yinlin could finish, a voice suddenly came from behind. The few of them turned their heads and saw the door of the Donghuang Bell Tower suddenly open, and Elder Wanzheng was walking out. He walked over and stopped in front of the few of them for a moment. The few of them bowed in unison. Greetings, Elder Wanzheng. Chu Liyue quickly glanced at his expression. Master, follow me. Elder Wanzheng's face was expressionless, and no one could tell what he was thinking. He only said this sentence and walked forward. The few of them looked at each other. Why do I feel like something is wrong with Elder Wanzheng? Luo Shishir muttered. It's not just a feeling, it's true. Zhuosheng's tone was firm, but his face was full of confusion. Strange. Chu Yu, logically speaking, your master, Elder Wanzheng, should be very proud and happy that you won this challenge so beautifully. Why? He couldn't explain it, but it was strange. It didn't seem like he was happy or angry, and it was hard to fathom. Chu Liyue shook his head. I'll go first, I'll find you later. With that he followed. Zhongsun wanted to follow, but he stopped when he remembered Elder Wanzheng's expression. Chu Liyue followed Elder Wanzheng back to his residence. This was Chu Liyue's first time coming to ancient Cypress Mountain. She was supposed to formally acknowledge him as her master on the second day after the examination, but something happened at Thousand Wine Mountain that night, and she was directly locked up in Pengmin Mountain. so she couldn't come. The mountain was lush with green trees, and the faint fragrance of herbs filled the air. In the academy, every elder's residence was independent, so there were only the two of them on the mountain. Halfway up the mountain, in a herb field, there was a simple wooden house. The two of them walked into the house, and Elder Wanjing finally stood still and turned around. He looked at Chu Luiyue quietly, and there was a sharp and cold light in his calmness. It was as if he wanted to see through her completely. Chu Luiyue's heart slowly tightened. Elder Wanjing stared at her and asked word by word, "Who taught you your boxing skills?" Love Network asked, "Who taught you your boxing skills?" Chapter 1173. Chu Luiyue didn't expect him to ask this question. She couldn't help but be taken aback. This technique, when she made her move earlier, she didn't think much about it. She just instinctively swung her fist. Now that she thought about it, De Bao seemed to have taught her fist technique when she was fighting with those puppets. Because most of her attention was on how to deal with the puppets, she didn't pay much attention to it. Why did Elder Wanjing suddenly ask this? Chu Luiyue pondered for a moment and answered, "I learned it from a senior." "What senior?" Elder Wanjing continued to ask. Chu Luiyue's eyebrows twitched slightly, judging from Elder Wanjing's reaction. Could it be that he knew De Bao? However, De Bao had never mentioned his identity before, nor had he mentioned Elder Wanjing and the others. Chu Luiyue couldn't tell what his background was, and how he was related to Elder Wanjing. "It's a senior I met by chance," Chu Luiyue said slowly. "I've sparred with him before, so I learned these moves along the way." "You? Sparred with him?" Elder Wanjing asked in an inexplicable tone. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. She felt that Elder Wanjing's gaze could see through her. "Where is he now?" Chu Luiyue shook her head. "I don't know." She really didn't know. Although De Bao said that they would meet in the academy, there wasn't even a trace of him. After entering the academy, she didn't have the time to look for him. Moreover, because she didn't know his identity, she didn't dare to make a big fuss. "You don't know?" Elder Wanjing obviously didn't believe her. He stared at the young man in front of him for a long time, but he couldn't figure out anything. This caused his originally firm belief to waver a little. "You really don't know?" Chu Luiyue sighed softly. "I really don't know." The room fell silent for a moment. Elder Wanjing sighed. "He's willing to teach you this fist technique. It's obvious that he thinks highly of you." His tone seemed to be nostalgic. Judging from his tone, he didn't seem to be hostile. Chu Luiyue thought in her heart and asked cautiously, "Master, do you know him?" Elder Wanjing was startled. Soon after, he laughed bitterly. "You could say that." Chu Luiyue was even more confused. "What do you mean?" "Sort of. You brat, your luck is pretty good." Elder Wanjing looked at her with a complicated gaze. There seemed to be something moving in his eyes. Chu Luiyue spoke after some deliberation. "To be able to receive guidance from that senior, this student also feels honored." Elder Wanjing nodded, then shook his head and smiled. "No wonder. As an early stage of the 7th step, you were actually able to defeat Lu Zian. With that person's guidance, what was a mere Lu Zian?" Chu Luiyue didn't say anything. Elder Wanjing suddenly smiled helplessly. "If I had known about this earlier, I might not have accepted you as my disciple back then." "Master, what do you mean?" Chu Luiyue was a little surprised. Elder Wanjing looked at her meaningfully. "You hid your talent as a martial artist, didn't you?" Chu Luiyue laughed. "Master is joking. If your talent isn't enough, you definitely won't be able to invite him to teach you. He has always hated stupid people the most." Elder Wanjing waved his hand. Chu Luiyue recalled the days she spent with De Bao, and 2 streams of hot tears welled up in her heart. That's true. Even someone like her couldn't avoid being despised by De Bao all the time, let alone others. "Although I don't know why you are only at the early stage of the 7th step, your combat strength is not bad. Your future potential is limitless, and you have a lot of potential." Elder Wanjing patted Chu Luiyue's shoulder. "Don't mention this to anyone for the time being. However, if Elder Bo Yen and the rest ask you, just answer truthfully." Chu Luiyue nodded. "This student understands. If you have time in the future, go to the martial artist side to learn more. Don't fall behind." Elder Wan Zheng's reminder made Chu Liyue feel that it was a little strange. This meant, cough. If you meet that person in the future, and are criticized for not being strong enough, don't say that I didn't give you time to cultivate. Elder Wan Zheng tried his best to defend himself. If he had known that Chu Yu had caught the eye of that person, he wouldn't have snatched him to be his disciple. However, he was in a difficult position now, and this child was indeed very talented in celestial physician. He really couldn't bear to give up. Therefore, he could only use this compromise. Chu Liyue was speechless. She vaguely felt that Elder Wan Zheng seemed to be respectful towards Dabao. His tone and demeanor were not normal at all. She paused for a moment and asked tentatively, Master, that person, is he also an elder of the academy? Elder Wan Zheng looked at her with a strange expression. Chu Liyue was speechless. Why do I feel like I'm being looked down on? It's fine if you don't know. If there is a chance in the future, you will know. Elder Wan Zheng sighed. Where's your black jade token? Chu Liyue took it out and handed it over. Elder Wan Zheng took out his green jade token. A stream of light flew out from his token and entered Chu Liyue's token. Chu Liyue saw that the points on his token had suddenly increased by 100,000. This is a small gift from me to you. These points are enough to support you for 2 to 3 months. When you break through to the 9th grade celestial physician, I will naturally reward you. Of course, the faster you can get on the Qingyan roll, the more rewards you will receive. As he spoke, Elder Wan Zheng handed over an ancient book. In this medical book, there are prescriptions for 9th grade medicinal pills. During this period of time, study it well, and strive to break through as soon as possible. If you lack any herbs, just use your points to exchange for them at the Medicine Wind Valley. Chu Liyue took it with both hands. Thank you, Master. Elder Wan Zheng nodded and asked again. By the way, how were you in Pengmin Mountain for the past few days? How was it? Love Network has a better reading experience. Chapter 1174. Chu Liyue wanted to say that she was doing well there, and even wanted to go there again. But in the end, her rationality still made her swallow these words. She lowered her head slightly. It's only right for a student to be punished for her mistakes. Seeing her like this, Elder Wan Zheng couldn't bear to reprimand her. Since this matter is over, let's forget about it, and let bygones be bygones. Thousand Wine Mountain isn't a place where students can enter as they wish. Don't do this again, understand? Chu Liyue answered obediently. Thank you for your guidance, Master. Elder Wan Zheng nodded in satisfaction. All right, go back and study the prescription in this book. If there's anything you don't understand, feel free to ask me. After that, he gave Chu Liyue a few more instructions and let her leave. Who was Dabao? On the way back, Chu Liyue kept thinking about this question. Judging from Elder Wan Zheng's attitude, Dabao's status should be quite high. After all, he was a divine-level expert who had forged a divine body. Even in the entire Lingxiao College, he should be an extremely powerful existence. Perhaps she should ask Dabao the next time she saw him. She quickly returned to her residence. Zheng Sun was already waiting at the door. When he saw her return, his face lit up. Junior Chuyu, how are you? Did Elder Wan Zheng do anything to you? Chu Liyue laughed. He's my master. Of course he wouldn't do anything to me. Senior Zheng Sun, you worry too much. Zheng Sun scratched his head in embarrassment. I was just anxious. After all, when Elder Wan Zheng brought you away, he didn't look too good. That didn't seem like a good thing. Chu Liyue thought for a while and said, with a disciple like me who causes trouble as soon as she arrives, it's inevitable that Master will have a headache. There was no way to refute this. Even Zheng Sun had to admit that Chu Liyue was really good at causing trouble. How long had she been here? And she had already caused so much trouble. You still know. Anyway, your name has already spread in the Lingxiao College. Many people are waiting to see you and Lu Yintong fight. Chu Liyue chuckled and walked towards his courtyard. What's there to see? She bullied you so much. Are you going to let it go just like that? Zheng Sun felt a little strange. I thought you said you wanted her to accompany you to Wanjiu Mountain for a month on purpose. I did it on purpose. However, it wasn't just to vent my anger. Chu Liyue looked lazy. She's only ranked in the 40s on the Ascension rankings. But there are numerous people that want to go to Myriad Wine Mountain, and there's no lack of people that are as formidable as her, or even stronger. Even if I bring her black feather token with me, I'm afraid some people won't give me face. What should I do then? I don't want to offend more people. Therefore, it was most appropriate to bring her along. Not only would he be able to hold his head high and take her down a notch, but he would also be able to pull her to the front when there was an unexpected situation. Why wouldn't he do it? Zhong Sun's expression changed slightly, and then he slowly raised his thumb. You are ruthless enough. After today's incident, everyone thought that Chuyu did this to take revenge on Lu Yintong. However, Chuyu was actually doing it for Myriad Wine Mountain. From the beginning to the end, his goal was never Lu Yintong. However, no matter what, Lu Yintong is still an extremely powerful genius on the Ascension rankings. I heard that she has been diligently cultivating a martial technique recently, wanting to break through her own strength. If she really succeeds, then charging into the top 40 isn't impossible. At that time, Chu Luiyue stood still, tilted his head, and asked with interest, "Is the top 40 very powerful?" Zhong Sun was stunned. Seeing the casual look of the youth opposite him, his heart skipped a beat, and he subconsciously thought that the other party was comparing Lu Yintong to Luo Yinlin. The top 40 is quite powerful. Of course, compared to Luo Yinlin, it's still a lot worse. But, Chuyu, you also know that relying on others is ultimately better than relying on yourself, right? Luo Yinlin could help once, but he couldn't help every time, right? Chu Luiyue pressed a hand on the door and was about to open it when he suddenly stopped. Thank you, senior brother Zhong Sun. She turned around and said seriously. Zhong Sun relaxed a little and smiled. Anyway, it's fine as long as you know what you're doing. With your talent, it won't be long before you can enter the Ascension rankings. It's not impossible for you to catch up in the future. Junior brother has been busy for so long. It's time for you to have a good rest. I won't disturb you anymore. Chu Luiyue nodded slightly. Zhong Sun quickly left. Chu Luiyue pushed the door and entered. She carefully locked the door. Click. Your troublemaking personality really hasn't changed at all. A cold but soft voice came from behind. Although the tone was as cold and dignified as possible, it was a pity that the voice was too childish, and it sounded especially out of character. Instead, it made people want to rush up and ravage him, mess up his hair, and pinch his little face. Chu Luiyue held back her laughter and turned around. In the room, who was sitting upright and obediently, if it wasn't Duge Mabao who she hadn't seen for a long time? Today he was still wearing the same purple brocade clothes, and his chubby and fair little face was no different from before. Chu Luiyue's hand suddenly felt a little itchy. Then, she met Duge Mabao's pair of magnificent and bewitching eyes. The two of them looked at each other for a moment. Duge Mabao seemed to have seen through her thoughts, and his expression gradually became dangerous. A faint chill spread out from his body. Cough. Chu Luiyue hurriedly coughed and walked forward. Dabao, where have you been before? Why are you only here now? He was still talking about it just now, and now he appeared. It was really Duge Mabao sneered. If you weren't locked up in Mount Pengmin, would I have to wait for you for so long? Chu Luiyue suddenly felt guilty. I didn't do it on purpose. She didn't explain too much, because she had an inexplicable feeling that Dabao should know about this. As expected, Dabao didn't ask too much and only frowned. If you had broken through earlier, your strength wouldn't have been so tyrannical, and you wouldn't have been bullied so wantonly. Still too weak. Chu Luiyue was speechless. She knew that he wouldn't be able to say anything else. They had just met, and the topic was brought up again. She rubbed her eyebrows, wanting to defend herself. I want to become stronger, but I need time. Could it be that I can continue to break through and directly become a god-level powerhouse? Duge Mabao glanced at her coldly. Chu Luiyue said, I'll work hard. It's good that you know. Duge Mabao let her go. Since you're already in the academy, you should seize the time and opportunity to cultivate well. Chu Luiyue looked at him, suddenly leaned closer, and asked curiously, Dabao, today, Elder Wanzhong saw that I used the fist technique you taught me, and he even asked about you. You Dugu Mabao's expression didn't change. Don't worry about him. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1175. Chuluiwe. But he's my master now. It's not good not to tell him, right? You won't ask too much. Dugu Mabao was calm and composed as he spoke with great certainty. You can just say whatever you want and send him away. Chuluiwe. That's Elder Wanzheng. How can you send him away just like that? Chuluiwe became more and more certain of her guess. She gritted her teeth and asked secretly. Debeo, your status is higher than Elder Wanzheng's, isn't it? Dugu Mabao glanced at her, as if he was looking at a fool. Chuluiwe obediently swallowed the rest of her words. Fine. Damn it. I shouldn't have asked that question. How is it in Mount Pingmin? Dugu Mabao suddenly changed the topic and asked casually. Chuluiwe leaned against the chair and rested her chin on one hand. In front of Dugu Mabao, there was no need for her to hide these things. She said very honestly, it was pretty good. No, it was very good. She touched her chin. I think I can go there a few more times. If others heard this, they would probably think that Chuluiwe had gone crazy. However, Dugu Mabao didn't say anything. He just lowered his eyes slightly. His thick and long eyelashes trembled slightly, hiding the emotions in his eyes. What do you mean? He asked faintly. Chuluiwe briefly told him what happened in Mount Pingmin. Anyway, when I was cultivating there, it was very smooth. It seemed to be more. Chuluiwe paused. For a moment, she didn't know how to describe that feeling. Convenient? Comfortable? She couldn't say. She had the Tianjin Yuan Meridian, and her ability to devour the heaven and earth force was extremely strong. However, when she was inside, the heaven and earth force was vast and majestic, but it was exceptionally gentle. When it entered her body, it didn't take much effort for her to completely integrate into her own strength. She had never felt this way before. Is there something special about that place? Was that why the origin power inside was different from the outside world? Chuluiwe looked at Dugu Mabao. Debeo, what do you think? Even though Elder Wanzheng said that he wasn't an elder of the academy, Chuluiwe thought that he should have a close relationship with Lingxiao College. Then perhaps he knew more about Pengmin Mountain? Pengmin Mountain's 7 pagodas are a special existence in the academy. Otherwise, it wouldn't be one of the places where severe punishments are carried out. Dugu Mabao's tone was indifferent, as if he had no interest in this. Your experiences, there's nothing strange about them. Chuluiwe nodded thoughtfully, but there was still one thing he did not understand. Since it's a punishment, I should feel terrible after going in. Why is it the opposite? Dugu Mabao raised his eyes and asked in a calm voice. When did you become like a normal person? Chuluiwe was speechless. For a moment, she couldn't refute. Her cultivation experience was indeed different from that of ordinary people. Maybe I'm fated with Pengmin Mountain, she muttered in a low voice. To be precise, she was fated with the space behind that door. She had chosen the same thing twice in a row. If she went there again, would she still choose the same thing? As soon as this dangerous thought appeared, Chuluiwe forcibly suppressed it. She came to the academy to cultivate diligently, not to cause trouble. You're about to break through to the middle of the 7th level? Dugu Mabao looked at her again. Chuluiwe laughed. Yes, I thought that it might not be so fast, but I didn't expect that after cultivating in Pengmin Mountain for 10 days, my progress would be so fast. If this continued, it wouldn't be long before she could officially break through. Dugu Mabao waved his small hand, and a chessboard with a faint glow appeared between the two. In that case, let's continue the game from last time. This time, Chuluiwe took the most steps ever since she played chess with Dugu Mabao. Of course, in the end, she was still exhausted and almost exhausted. However, perhaps because he knew that she had experienced a lot today, Dugu Mabao quickly let her go. Looking at the completely dark sky outside, Debeo stood up and flew down from the chair. Chuluiwe asked in surprise. Debeo, you're leaving? Dugu Mabao didn't look back and nodded slightly. You just have to stay here and cultivate properly. Where are you going? At this point, Chuluiwe suddenly remembered that she hadn't asked him where he had been all this time. If he was also in the academy, then I have a place to go. Duga Mabao's answer was extremely simple, and it was obvious that he had no intention of continuing. This time tomorrow I'll be here again. Chu Luiwa hurriedly called out to him. Hey Debao, I won't be here at this time tomorrow. Duga Mabao turned around and frowned. What do you mean? Actually, I'll be going out later. For the next month, I won't be staying here at night. Duga Mabao suddenly understood something, and his devilish purple eyes narrowed dangerously. You are going to Thousand Wine Mountain? Chu Luiwa nodded honestly. It wasn't easy to win the bet. Of course I can't give it up. She had already offended Lu Yintong. Wouldn't it be a great loss if she didn't go? Duga Mabao snorted coldly. Or is it because of that red-tailed phoenix? As soon as he finished speaking, Dumpling ran out and squatted on Chu Luiwa's shoulder. It shook its wings and nodded vigorously with a face full of pride. Of course, Duga Mabao looked at it coldly. Even if you don't go, as your strength increases, the bloodline in its body will gradually be stimulated. Chu Luiwa wasn't surprised that Duga Mabao knew about this. She shrugged and smiled. I know, but since I have this opportunity, I don't want to give it up. If I break through to the divine level, who knows how long I'll have to wait? Duga Mabao frowned slightly. He wanted to say something but stopped himself. Actually, it might not take too long. But he couldn't tell her this. Since you've made up your mind, then so be it. But Duga Mabao paused. You're not allowed to stay in Thousand Wine Mountain during the forbidden period. Chu Luiwa's heart skipped a beat. She chuckled. No, I've been locked up once. There won't be a second time. Duga Mabao looked at her with a heavy gaze. Chu Luiwa suddenly had an idea. Debao, you know the secret of the spring on Thousand Wine Mountain, don't you? Duga Mabao didn't say anything. Then, why don't you tell me? Ahem, I'm joking. Chu Luiwa was halfway through her sentence when she tactfully stopped. Duga Mabao turned and walked outside. Chu Luiwa didn't give up and asked. Debao, tell me, if I really make a big mistake in the academy, or if I offend someone powerful, this little life of mine. Duga Mabao stopped in his tracks. With me around, no one can take your life. Besides, he sneered, Rongxiu isn't an idiot. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1176. Chu Luiwa was a little surprised. She did not expect him to mention Rongxiu all of a sudden. Moreover, why did his words sound so strange? However, it's one thing for you to have a backer. It's another thing for you to not court death. Duga Mabao opened the door. Although you can't continue most of your previous training in Lingxiao College, I'll still personally teach you when I'm free. With that, he took a step forward. In the next moment, that small figure disappeared into the thick night sky. Hey you. Chu Luiwa came back to her senses and rubbed the space between her eyebrows. She could almost imagine what kind of days awaited her in the future. She picked up Dumpling and walked out. Let's go. While we're still free, let's go wander around to our heart's content. Thousand Wine Mountain. Thousand Wine Mountain opened from evening to early morning. At this time, many students had already gathered at Thousand Wine Mountain. However, compared to the day before, there were much fewer people. For most of the students in the college, Thousand Wine Mountain was a place for entertainment. It was good to come once in a while, but there was no need to come every day. Moreover, Chu Luiwa and Lu Yintong's matter had caused a stir recently. Many people were afraid and did not want to cause trouble, so they did not come. As soon as Chu Luiwa arrived at Thousand Wine Mountain, she attracted everyone's attention. Countless pairs of eyes fell on her with different expressions. However, Chu Luiwa turned a blind eye to it and walked straight up. She finally stopped when she was about to reach the top of the mountain. At this time, the space beside the spring was almost full. Lu Yintong's figure did not appear among them. Chu Luiwa looked at a young man beside her. Senior Sister Lu is not here today? It was obvious who Senior Sister Lu was referring to. The young man was stunned for a moment and nodded subconsciously. I didn't see her. Chu Luiwa raised her eyebrows slightly. It seemed that Lu Yintong did not take her words to heart. It was already so late, but he still hadn't come. She could wait, but Dumpling didn't have the patience. Chu Luiwa stood in place. and waited for about 15 minutes before Lu Yintong finally arrived. Gong Sheng, who had been with her that day, also came with her. "Senior Lu, you've made me wait for a long time." Chu Luyue was the first to speak with a smile. After seeing Chu Luyue, Lu Yintong's expression, which had finally calmed down, changed again. However, the gazes of the people around her made her swallow her words. Something came up at the last minute. She said impatiently, her tone cold. Chu Luyue didn't intend to waste time blaming her. He smiled. "Senior apprentice Sister Lu is a busy person. It's already very difficult for her to make time. Please." Lu Yintong gritted her teeth. This was only the first day, and she already felt humiliated. She really didn't know how she was going to endure the next month. However, she had already made a promise in front of so many people. If she went back on her word, her reputation in the academy would be ruined. Therefore, no matter how uncomfortable it was, she had to continue. She took a deep breath and looked at the top of the mountain. When she saw the faces of those people, her expression changed slightly. Why are they here today? When Chu Luyue saw her expression, an idea popped up in her mind. She also looked over and quickly sized up the few people. There were men and women, and they were all dressed in luxurious clothes. They seemed to be the children of aristocratic families. Most importantly, the aura around those people was not much weaker than Lu Yintong's. Moreover, judging from Lu Yintong's expression, those people might be stronger than her. "Senior Lu, is there a problem?" Chu Luyue asked gently. Lu Yintong slowly clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms. He still has the nerve to ask. But at this moment, she had no choice but to bite the bullet and continue. She turned her head, lowered her voice, and said word by word. "1 month later, we'll settle this score properly." The threat and warning in her words were undisguised. Chu Luyue's face showed a trace of guilt. "Originally, I thought that if Senior Lu felt that it was difficult, then I would temporarily forget about today. But since Senior Lu said that there's no problem, then I will naturally accept." As she said that, the corners of her lips curled up slightly. "Senior Lu, you're a woman of your word. You're really a role model for our generation." Chu Luyue didn't lower her voice when she said these 2 sentences, so quite a few people around her heard them clearly. For a moment, the atmosphere became strange. Lu Yintong didn't expect that she would dare to play such a trick in front of so many people. Her expression almost collapsed. "You, a Tong." Just as Lu Yintong was about to explode, Gong Sheng suddenly spoke, pulling her back to her senses. "We still have other things to do later. Let's deal with junior brother Chu Yu's problem as soon as possible. Otherwise, junior brother Chu Yu will suspect that you forgot again." As Gong Sheng spoke, he looked meaningfully at Chu Luyue. Although he was smiling, his words were filled with undisguised sarcasm. He wasn't present during the day, but he had heard everything from Lu Yintong. Although he was shocked that a rank 7 warrior like Chu Luyue was able to defeat Lu Zian, who was an entire rank higher, he still felt contempt and disdain for Chu Luyue. In his opinion, there was a problem with Chu Luyue's victory. He must have used some underhanded method. In addition, he later asked Lu Yintong to send him tens of thousands of wine mountains for a month. In his heart, he hated Chu Luyue even more. Chu Luyue didn't care about this at all. No matter what they said, as long as what needed to be done was done, nothing else mattered. Thus she replied with a smile. "Senior brother Gong Sheng is right. My memory has always been bad. In the next month, I hope that senior sister Lu will forgive me." Lu Yintong's chest seemed to have a ball of flames surging crazily, almost burning her to ashes. Without saying a word, she lifted her foot and walked up. Gong Sheng followed closely behind. When he passed by Chu Luyue, he stopped in his tracks and looked sideways at Chu Luyue deeply. "You have guts." He still had a smile on his face, but the words that came out of his mouth were cold and sinister, making people shudder. Chu Luyue chuckled. "Thank you for your praise, senior brother Gong Sheng." Gong Sheng took a deep breath, turned around and quickly followed Lu Yintong. Chu Luyue raised his eyebrows and slowly walked over. Lu Yintong came to the spring at the top of the mountain. The few people who were already standing there heard the commotion and turned their heads to look. Lu Yintang stood still, took a deep breath and said politely, Liang Xiaoxiao, is there another seat here? Can I? No. A delicately dressed woman interrupted her and said lazily, That's right. There's already someone here. He should be here soon. If you want to come, you should come early tomorrow. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1177. Liang Xiaoxiao was very direct. Obviously, she did not intend to give Lu Yintang any face. This was because she was ranked 39th on the warrior leaderboard, much higher than Lu Yintang. One had to know that the competition on the Qingyun leaderboard was very fierce. Every time one moved up a rank, it meant that one's strength was much stronger than the previous one. Lu Yintang naturally did not dare to offend Liang Xiaoxiao. Of course, there was another reason. Liang Xiaoxiao was born in a first-rate family, much more powerful than Lu Yintang's second-rate family background. Even though everyone in the academy rarely talked about this matter, it didn't mean that they could really ignore this matter. After all, they would not stay in the academy forever. In the future, when they left the academy, they would have to face these problems if they wanted to survive in the realm of God. If he offended someone with a strong background here, his future days would not be easy. Therefore, the arrogant Lu Yintang did not get angry when she was given the cold shoulder. In fact, the expression on her face became even more courteous. I wonder who that person is. I can use points to exchange with him. Liang Xiaoxiao seemed to have heard a joke. She suddenly covered her mouth and laughed. Points? Do we look like people who lack those things? Her tone was light as if she was teasing, but to Lu Yintang, it was very harsh. It was not that Liang Xiaoxiao and the others did not lack points. In Lingxiao College, the importance of points was self-evident. No one would complain about having more points. But relatively speaking, they did not need to exchange such things for points. It was embarrassing. These words were indeed mocking Lu Yintang. Lu Yintang was also in a dilemma. Who would have thought that she would meet this group of people on the first day? Normally they wouldn't come here, but for some reason, they actually came together today. Moreover, they took all the seats and did not give her any chance at all. She did not want to offend these people, but there was still the aggressive Chuyu behind her. Just as Lu Yintang was thinking about how to speak again, Liang Xiaoxiao's eyes lit up, and she waved behind Lu Yintang. Ziyuan, come quickly. I've been waiting for you for a long time. Hearing this, everyone present turned to look at him. Lu Yintang's heart skipped a beat, and she quickly turned around. When she saw who it was, her face turned ugly. Jiang Ziyuan. The person that Liang Xiaoxiao said didn't come was her? Jiang Ziyuan's movements were light as she floated down. Under the moonlight, there was a sense of ethereal immortality. The crowd was silent for a moment, and many people's eyes flashed with surprise. Jiang Ziyuan didn't seem to notice these gazes at all. She walked straight towards them and said with a faint smile, I'm sorry for being late. I was going to come just now, but I comprehended something at the last minute, so I'm late. Liang Xiaoxiao smiled enchantingly. Another breakthrough? Jiang Ziyuan blushed and shook her head. Not so fast. Then it's still fast. Liang Xiaoxiao and the others looked at each other. Look at you, didn't you just break through not long ago? In the blink of an eye, he was about to break through again. If this goes on, all of us will be completely defeated by you. I won't play with you anymore. That's right. Ziyuan, when you're cultivating, you should consider other people's feelings. My heart is about to be shattered into pieces by you. Haha. Ren Ziyuan is going to chase after senior brother Rong Xiao. How can you compare to her? The last young man's unintentional words caused the originally noisy and lively atmosphere to instantly turn stiff and cold. The smile on Jiang Ziyuan's face froze for a moment, and then faded a lot. Liang Xiaoxiao glared at the man who didn't know what to say. Senior brother Rong Xiao's strength is tyrannical. Of the 4 rankings of the Azure Sky Roll, he has taken first place in 2. Who in the academy doesn't have him as their goal? What's there to say? The man hurriedly said, Yes. I also have the same idea. However, senior brother Rong Xiao is a rare top genius. Ordinary people can't be compared to him, right? Jiang Ziyuan said indifferently. He is naturally the most powerful. How can I be compared to him? Everyone looked at each other, and the atmosphere was very awkward. Who in the academy didn't know that Jiang Jiwan was infatuated with Rong Xiao? Although Rong Xiao had already left when she entered the academy and rarely came back, everyone was well aware of her relationship with Rong Xiao. Everyone thought that she would be Rong Xiao's princess consort. Who knew? Liang Xiaoxiao's eyes turned, and there was a natural seductive look in her eyes. Aya, what's the point of saying all that? Ziyuan, you haven't been to Thousand Wine Mountain for a long time, right? Come quickly. This spring water seems to be sweeter than before. Jiang Jiwan forced a smile, and was about to walk over when she saw Lu Yintong standing at the side. A trace of disgust flashed across her eyes. Lu Yintong, why are you here? Lu Yintong secretly thought that enemies were bound to meet on a narrow road. She actually bumped into Jiang Jiwan. It was also her fault for being too careless. Liang Xiaoxiao and the others had always been close to Jiang Jiwan. When she saw them just now, she should have thought of this. If she left immediately, it would seem that she was guilty. Isn't Thousand Wine Mountain a place where everyone can come? Lu Yintong asked. Jiang Jiwan's lips twitched without a smile. That's true. Then please go ahead. With that, she lifted her feet and walked forward, not even looking at her. It was as if she didn't care about Lu Yintong at all. Lu Yintong was secretly angry and turned to leave. But after taking a few steps, she was stopped by someone. Senior sister Lu, where are you going? Chu Luyue stood in front of her and raised an arm to block her way. You haven't fulfilled your promise to me yet. Lu Yintong was very annoyed. Let's call it a day. We'll talk about it tomorrow. With that, she was about to force her way out. However, Chu Luyue held her back tightly and didn't give her a chance to move forward. Senior sister Lu, I'm really sorry. I don't want to wait until tomorrow. If you continue to push it to the day after tomorrow, then the day after tomorrow, what's the point of this bet? Lu Yintong gritted her teeth. I said tomorrow. Chu Luyue's eyes moved back and forth between her and Jiang Jiwan. It seemed that the two of them had a deep grudge. She didn't expect to meet them so directly today. There were several people on the other side, and they seemed to be very confident. No wonder Lu Yintong wanted to leave. If she stayed, wouldn't she be humiliated for nothing? However, Chu Luyue didn't intend to care about this. She only wanted Lu Yintong to fulfill her promise. Senior sister Lu, I also said that I don't want to wait until tomorrow. Chu Luyue's tone became more serious. At this moment, Liang Xiaoxiao's coquettish laughter suddenly sounded. Hey Lu Yintong, have you fallen to the point where you're threatened by junior brother? I remember how glorious it was when you confessed to senior brother Rong Xiao in public. How did it end up like this? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1178. Liang Xiaoxiao. Lu Yintong was like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. Her hair stood on end, and she could no longer hold it in. She let out a sharp cry. Don't forget that I'm still your senior sister. Show some respect. Senior sister? Liang Xiaoxiao's smile blossomed. You entered the academy half a year earlier than us, but your strength is far behind our senior sister? Her words were full of sarcasm. Lu Yintong's face was red with anger. There seemed to be flames burning in her eyes. These people, they're too much. Chu Luyue raised his eyebrows slightly. Confess in public? It seems like Rong Xiao is quite popular in the academy. No wonder the atmosphere between Lu Yintong and Jiang Jiwan is so strange. When rivals meet, their eyes will be exceptionally red. They must have fought several times in public and in secret. However, Lu Yintong was obviously at a disadvantage now. The other party had the advantage in numbers and was stronger than her. It was normal for her to be humiliated like this. Xiao, Jiang Jiwan spoke, as if she wanted to make peace. That's all in the past. Why bring it up again? Anyway, the person standing next to Rong Xiao was not either of them. Jiang Jiwan had long known that there were countless people in the academy who had a crush on Rong Xiao. If she were to target each and every one of them, she would have been exhausted. The reason why she was in such a mess with Lu Yintong was because the bird that stuck its head out would be shot. There were so many people who liked Rong Xiu, but most of them did not even dare to say a word to him. However, Lu Yintang confessed to Rong Xiu in public. This matter was so big that Jiang Jiwan had been brooding over it. Although Rong Xiu did not even look at Lu Yintang at that time, it had happened. Jiang Jiwan could not get over it. What was even more ridiculous was that Rong Xiu had said something to Lu Yintang. He said he already had someone he liked. These words were not only for Lu Yintang, but also for the other girls in the academy, who were ready to make a move. After Lu Yintang found out, she thought it was Jiang Jiwan, so she went to Jiang Jiwan's place to make a fuss. Thus, the two of them became enemies. Even after Rong Xiu left the academy, there was still a deep gap between the two of them. Every time they met, they would fall into this kind of awkward situation. It was fine at first, but as time passed, Jiang Jiwan caught up and gradually surpassed Lu Yintang. Because of the rumors about her relationship with Rong Xiu, many people in the academy wanted to befriend her. Jiang Jiwan's strength had increased greatly, and she had expanded her network. She quickly crushed Lu Yintang. As a result, Lu Yintang's days in the academy gradually became difficult. Even though Jiang Ziyuan didn't finish her sentence, everyone could tell that she didn't care about Lu Yintang at all from her nonchalant attitude. Liang Xiaoxiao laughed coquettishly. Okay. Since you said so then, Senior Lu, I won't see you out. Lu Yintang's expression turned stern. She was about to retort when Gongsheng pulled her back. There was a rare look of worry on his usually cynical face. Tong, bear with it for a while. They were indeed no match for those people now. Lu Yintang shook off his hand. I can walk on my own. However, she had just taken half a step when she heard Jiang Jiwan's voice behind her. There's nothing to be angry about. There's no need to lose your dignity for such people. Hearing this, the suppressed anger in Lu Yintang's heart finally exploded. She turned around angrily and walked back quickly. Gongsheng saw that her expression was not right and quickly pulled her back. Tong! Lu Yintang quickly dodged, not even letting him touch her. Sensing that Lu Yintang was going back on her words, Liang Xiaoxiao and the others looked back. Jiang Jiwan. Lu Yintang stood still and stared at Jiang Jiwan. Jiang Jiwan frowned slightly. Lu Yintang sneered. Who do you think you are? Do you think Rong Xiu really cares about you? The academy has already spread the news that Rong Xiu already has a princess. And that person isn't you at all. You've always thought of yourself as the future princess of Yuntian Tower. But in the end, you didn't even get the status of a concubine, did you? Her words were spoken quickly and anxiously, like a string of cannons flying out, not giving anyone time to react. Jiang Jiwan's expression finally changed. Lu Yintang, you're presumptuous. Lu Yintang sneered. I'm presumptuous? Who do you think you are to speak to me in such a manner? In terms of background, the Tomb of Immortal Water is just one of the many tribes that rely on Yuntian Tower. At most, you're a second-rate family. In terms of seniority, you entered the academy later than me. Don't you understand the principle of seniority? In terms of strength, your ranking on the warrior rankings is indeed higher than mine. But I'm famous on both rankings. If we really compare, I might not be much worse than you. Even the princess of Yuntian Tower hasn't come to criticize me. You think you can? Slap. Jiang Jiwan finally couldn't hold back and directly raised her hand to slap Lu Yintang. Her combat strength was higher than Lu Yintang's, so Lu Yintang couldn't dodge this slap. There was dead silence all around. Chu Luyue touched his chin with interest, half smiling. A certain someone's absence could still cause such a huge commotion, really? Jiang Jiwan. Gongsheng immediately stepped forward and blocked Lu Yintang, his brows tightly knitted. You're too much. Jiang Jiwan regretted it after she slapped Lu Yintang. She had always maintained a good image in the outside world. Who would have thought that she would hit Lu Yintang in the heat of the moment? Many gazes fell on her. Her eyes quickly turned red, and her expression was full of grievance. I don't have the right. If he doesn't like it, the promise of elders and childhood sweethearts are all in vain. If he likes it, even if it's someone from the outside world, he wouldn't mind. What am I? With that, she stomped her feet and quickly left. Hey, Ziyuan. Liang Xiaoxiao shouted and anxiously said to the people around her. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and chase after her. The few of them quickly followed her. Liang Xiaoxiao walked a few steps, then looked back at Lu Yintang. We'll remember today's score. With that, her figure quickly disappeared from everyone's sight. Lu Yintang's face turned pale. Only then did she realize what she had just done. Chu Luyue crossed her arms, her slender fingers tapping lightly, the tip of her brows raised slightly. Was she slandering her in front of everyone? Digression. It's the end of the month, the various stars haven't appeared yet. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1179. There was dead silence. Because of this sudden commotion, the originally lively mountain became cold and silent. Many people looked at each other with different expressions. The words that Jiang Jiwan said just now. There was too much information. An agreement between elders, childhood sweethearts? Didn't that mean that she and Rong Xiu were engaged by their elders a long time ago? It was only because someone snatched her away that they didn't get together? And the princess consort of the Yuntian Tower was actually an outsider? Although Elder Bo Yan and the others already knew about the news from the Yuntian Tower, it wasn't spread. Many people in the academy didn't know about it. That was why they were so shocked when they heard it. Gradually the crowd started to talk about it. I heard that the princess consort of the Yuntian Tower had a mysterious background. I didn't expect her to be an outsider. Let alone senior brother Rong Xiu. Such a person isn't even qualified to be with a third-rate family in the Divine Ruins world, right? TSK, I really don't know what senior brother Rong Xiu is thinking. Did he reject his engagement with Jiang Jiwan and marry another woman? Jiang Jiwan and senior brother Rong Xiu don't have an engagement, right? If they did, according to her personality, she would have announced it long ago. Even if they didn't, it should be about the same. After all, she was raised in the Yuntian Tower by their clan leader since she was young. It's obvious that she's being groomed to be the future princess consort of the Yuntian Tower. Unfortunately, I'm a little curious. I wonder what kind of woman could catch the eye of senior brother Rong Xiu. Everyone was talking. Chu Luyue turned a deaf ear to them and walked to the mouth of the spring. Well, no matter what, everyone had left, leaving a big empty space. Dumpling flew down and stood on a rock beside the mouth of the spring. It lowered its head and drank. If it weren't for the fact that there were so many people around, it would have already charged in. Chu Luyue smiled when he saw how happy it was. He looked up at Lu Yintang. Senior sister Lu, many thanks. If it wasn't for Lu Yintang, things would have been a little tricky. Her voice brought Lu Yintang back to her senses. She raised her head subconsciously. Lu Yintang's heart sank when she saw the smiling young man standing beside the spring. He did it on purpose. This Chuyu. He clearly did it on purpose. He must have expected that there would be a fight over the position next to the mouth of the spring. So he deliberately brought her along. She had become his target. She had offended those people for him. In the future, even if they pursued the matter, those people would only find trouble with her. As for Chuyu, he had obtained all the benefits and could still sit back and relax. Lu Yintang wanted to explode. She wanted to scream hysterically. However, in the end, all that was left in her heart was despair. She couldn't do that. She had no reason. There had never been a moment when Lu Yintang regretted what she had done that day as much as she did now. From the beginning, she shouldn't have made that bet. She shouldn't have agreed to the conditions that Chuyu had proposed. But now it was too late to say anything. Thinking of the warning that Liang Xiaoxiao and the others had given her before they left, she gradually felt uneasy. Jiang Juan alone wasn't that difficult to deal with, but there were so many of them moreover. She still had the Yuntian Tower's clan leader behind her. Thinking of this, her legs finally went weak, and she almost fell to the ground. Atong! Gong Sheng hurriedly supported her. His brows were tightly knitted, and his eyes were filled with worry. Atong, I'll send you back first. Lu Yintang nodded with difficulty. Gong Sheng looked at Chu Luyue and said in a deep voice, Junior brother Chuyu, don't think that you can completely remove yourself from this matter. If anything happens to Atong in the future, you definitely won't be able to escape. With that, he supported Lu Yintong and left. Chu Luiyue lowered his head and glanced at Dumpling. Dumpling, for you. I've offended everyone I could. Dumpling quickly raised her head. Her eyes were bright, and there seemed to be a silver tianlei flickering in the depths of her eyes. Chu Luiyue couldn't help but smile. The effect at the mouth of the spring was really obvious. Dumpling was already very strong. I wonder what she would be like when her bloodline power fully awakens. While Dumpling was devouring the power in the spring, Chu Luiyue wasn't idle either. The concentration of origin power on Thousand Wine Mountain was also very high. Perhaps it was because there was a lot of tianlei stored in the spring, but the origin power was somewhat different from the outside. Chu Luiyue simply sat cross-legged and began to cultivate in peace. She was indeed getting closer and closer to breaking through to the middle stage of the 9th rank. In fact, she could already feel the invisible barrier. It was as if she could break it with just a little bit of force. Chu Luiyue was waiting for that opportunity. Seeing Chu Luiyue so calm and composed, the others on the mountain felt even more strange. Speaking of which, the source of today's dispute was still Chu Yu. Lu Yintong and Jiang Jiwan had completely fallen out, but he acted as if nothing had happened. Not only did he allow his contracted divine beast to drink the spring water, he even started to cultivate on the spot. Just what kind of confidence did he have to be so calm and collected? If he didn't have a backer, they wouldn't have heard of him. If it wasn't for his strong mental fortitude, this would have been proven several times since he entered the academy. Originally, some people wanted to go up and greet him, but when they thought of what happened tonight, they gave up. Offending Lu Yintong wasn't enough, and now there was also Jiang Jiwan. Although the two of them were the ones who fell out, as long as Jiang Jiwan calmed down, Chu Yu would more or less be implicated. After thinking about it, most people chose to stay away. Thousand Wine Mountain gradually quieted down. On another mountain, Elder Wensi was tidying up the ancient books that he had treasured for many years in his room. There was a thin layer of dust on the bookshelf. It was obvious that no one had touched it for a long time. Elder Wensi waved his sleeve and swept away all the dust on it. Looking at the flying dust, his eyes were a little blurred, and he muttered to himself in a low voice, "That's right. It's been a long time since someone came to peek." Knock knock. There was a knock on the door. Elder Wensi put away his thoughts and looked up. The door opened, and a familiar figure was leaning against the door frame. "Huafeng, why are you here again?" Elder Wensi secretly heaved a sigh of relief, but a trace of impatience appeared on his face. From the corner of his eye, he saw Elder Huafeng holding a wine pot in his hand. "Go back and drink by yourself." As Elder Wensi spoke, he was about to chase him away. "Why are you wandering around so late at night?" He walked over and was about to close the door when he smelled a strong smell of alcohol. It was the smell of Elder Huafeng. Elder Wensi frowned in disdain. "Why are you drinking so much? Let me say this first, I don't accept drunkards." "Wensi." Elder Huafeng suddenly spoke. He wasn't drunk at all. He slowly exhaled. "Tell me, why hasn't that scourge appeared yet?" Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1180. Elder Wensi's heart skipped a beat. He took a closer look at him and found that his face was normal. His eyes were clear, and he didn't look drunk at all. And the strong smell of alcohol seemed to be coming from his clothes. The wine pot was empty, but it seemed that the wine didn't enter his intestines. Instead, it spilled out. Elder Wensi grabbed his arm and pulled him into the room, closing the door behind him. After confirming that there was no one around, Elder Wensi looked at him. "You came here today to talk to me about this?" Elder Huafeng found a chair and sat down. He frowned, as if he couldn't figure it out. Say, she had already entered Fangzhou City that day. Logically speaking, no matter how much she likes to play, she should have come back after so long, right? But why is there no sign of her? For this reason, he specially waited for a few days in Fangzhou. But until now, she still hadn't appeared. The more time passed, the more Elder Huafeng couldn't let go. So he came to Elder Wensi to ask for his opinion. She has always been like this. Her temper is unpredictable, and she might have been delayed by something at the last minute. Besides, even if she returned to Fangzhou, no one said that she must return to the academy. Elder Wenxi sat down next to him. Maybe she left again? Elder Huafeng's lips moved, and he couldn't help but curse in a low voice. That little heartless girl. She had already arrived in Fangzhou. With her ability, she would definitely know that it was him and Wenxi who were there that day. She ran away without a trace for a few years, and when she came back, she didn't even see me. I don't know where the rules are. Elder Wenxi glanced at him meaningfully. When has she ever had the slightest connection with the word rules? Bang! Elder Huafeng slammed the wine pot on the table. If she doesn't come back, then so be it. Without her, this old man can still drink a few more pots of wine. Elder Wenxi couldn't be bothered to expose him. Looking at his bored expression, he knew that no matter how much he drank, he wouldn't be happy. She has her own thoughts. When she wants to come back, she will naturally come back. What's the hurry? Elder Wenxi smiled. Didn't you just accept a disciple recently? Teach her well. She's not even our disciple, so why waste your time here? Chi. Elder Huafeng glanced at the bookshelf next to him with infinite disdain. Then why did you deliberately release those unique copies? Other than her, no one else would dare to steal books from you. You, Elder Wenxi choked. Hurting each other was the most annoying. Besides, didn't you also take in a disciple? Both Luo Shishir and Zhuosheng are good seedlings, especially Luo Shishir. In the future, she'll definitely be ranked in the top 10 of the Ascension rankings. Half of that girl's thoughts are on that brat Chuyu. Elder Wenxi couldn't help but tease. However, Chuyu's talent in this area seems to be pretty good. We didn't notice it before. They already knew that Chu Luiyue had defeated Lu Ziyan, and they were all very surprised. The fact that he was able to fight above his level was too telling. Back then, he only said that he was a rank 7 warrior, and didn't reveal anything else. Who could have guessed it? However, it seemed that he was going to specialize in celestial physician. Elder Wenxi shrugged. That old thing Wanzheng got lucky. It's rare to see such a genius with spirituality. The two sat facing each other, and were quiet for a while. Immediately, the two looked at each other. Huafeng, don't you think that Chuyu is a bit similar to her? The moon was high in the sky. Soon it was time to leave Thousand Wine Mountain. Chu Luiyue swallowed the last force and slowly opened his eyes. It wouldn't be long before she could break through. Turning his head to look, half of Dumpling's body was already soaked in the spring water. The water was bubbling, and it looked very comfortable. Chu Luiyue grabbed its wings and lifted it up. Dumpling was originally enjoying itself, but it was suddenly interrupted and couldn't help but be resentful. Chu Luiyue pretended not to see it and shook it like a rag. Not today. She had just come out of Pengmin Mountain. Even if she wanted to come again, she couldn't choose today. Wouldn't that be deliberately making things difficult for the elders? Besides, Debao had deliberately told her not to do anything when she left. She had a hunch that as long as she secretly did something here, Debao would definitely know immediately. At that time, what awaited her wouldn't be a good result. I'll think of a way another day. The wet dumpling could only agree. Although the force she devoured now wasn't enough, she could barely accumulate it. When the time was right, she would completely activate the bloodline power together. When Chu Luiyue walked to the foot of the mountain, she looked back. Because she had already walked out of the barrier, the scene at the top of the mountain couldn't be seen clearly. Perhaps there were still elders refining there, or perhaps the power of Tianlei in the spring was still increasing. She retracted her gaze and left with Dumpling. For the next period of time, Chu Luiyue lived very peacefully. During the day, she studied the medical skills and alchemy that Elder Wanzheng gave her. And at night, she brought Debao to Thousand Wine Mountain to cultivate. Of course, before going to Thousand Wine Mountain, Debao would still come on time to spar with her. Perhaps it was because the incident between Lu Yintong and Jiang Juan on the first day was too big, so not many people went to Thousand Wine Mountain during this period of time. This undoubtedly made things much easier for Chu Luiyue. 10 days later, she successfully broke through to middle stage 7th stage. It seemed that everything was progressing smoothly. However, as time passed, Chu Luiyue became more and more anxious. because she still couldn't think of a way to stay in Thousand Wine Mountain all day. Every day, Dumpling could only rely on the little time at night to accumulate power. More importantly, the power of heavenly lightning stored in the spring would only appear during the time of the prohibition. And that was the key to activating Dumpling's bloodline power. Bang! Halfway up the mountain, Chu Luiyue slapped her hand, and the pills in the medicine cauldron quickly flew up. She quickly pulled them back and put them into a jade box. Click! The remnants of the rich medicinal fragrance spread out. Master. Chu Luiyue walked over and presented the jade box with both hands. Elder Wanzheng stroked his beard in satisfaction and took the jade box. I didn't expect you to choose this for your first pill refinement. As he spoke, he opened the jade box, and a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. Actually, when Chu Luiyue and Lu Ziyan challenged each other, he saw it clearly from the Donghuang Bell Tower. He already knew that his new disciple's talent and ability in pill refinement were stronger than he expected. However, when he saw this pill, he was still shocked and overjoyed. You succeeded in refining a superior grade 8 pill on your first try. Moreover, you did every step very well. How rare. He looked at Chu Luiyue with emotion. It won't be long before you can try refining a grade 9 pill. Chu Luiyue chuckled, took out the medical book, and handed it over. Elder Wanzheng was stunned. What are you? Chu Luiyue paused. This student has finished reading this book, so I'll return it to you. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1181. You finished reading it? Elder Wanzheng asked in shock. You've memorized all the prescriptions in the book? Chu Luiyue nodded. She had finished reading it a few days ago, but she only had time to return the book today. Some of the prescriptions were for grade 8 and grade 9. They were all high-quality elixir prescriptions. Elder Wanzheng looked at her suspiciously. I know you have a photographic memory, but you've understood all the grade 9 prescriptions? The difference between grade 8 and grade 9 was not as simple as a grade 8 elixir. A grade 9 elixir required several times more herbs than a grade 8 elixir. The process was complicated, and it required a lot of techniques and other aspects. It was not easy to break through from a grade 8 celestial physician to a grade 9 one. Usually a grade 8 celestial physician would have to put in a lot of effort to understand the grade 9 prescriptions. It had only been 10 days, and he had already mastered all of them? Chu Luiyue met his gaze and smiled. Master, if you don't believe me, you can test me. Elder Wanzheng took the book and asked a few questions. Chu Luiyue answered all of them fluently. Elder Wanzheng looked at her, and the corner of his eyes twitched. You've seen the prescriptions in the book before? Chu Luiyue pondered for a moment. I've seen 5 of them before. It was her first time reading the rest of the books. But she had still managed to understand all of them in such a short time. Elder Wanzheng felt very conflicted. When he saw Chu Luiyue successfully fusing the elixir the other day, he knew she was not far from becoming a grade 9 celestial physician. But this was a little too. Master, what's wrong? Chu Luiyue asked when she saw his strange expression. Elder Wanzheng held the cauldron and waved his hand. Nothing. I'm just lamenting how it feels to have a genius disciple. Chu Luiyue was speechless. Brat, you're still unknown even now. You're simply. Elder Wanzheng looked at Chu Luiyue with a faint gaze. He had been in Lingxiao College for many years and had seen many students. Those who could enter this place were naturally all geniuses. However, even geniuses had differences in strength, and Chu Luiyue was undoubtedly one of the best. In fact, until now, he still didn't know much about his new disciple's background. If he really came from some aristocratic family, with such talent, his reputation should have spread far and wide. Chu Luiyue lowered his eyes slightly. That doesn't seem to be the case. Her title as the Princess of the Yuntian Tower seemed to be quite famous outside recently. But of course he couldn't say that. Have you ever tried to refine a 9th grade medicinal pill? Elder Wanzheng asked. Chu Luiyue shook his head. After her rebirth, her strength had not been restored, so she had not done so. Elder Wanzheng recalled the medicinal pill that she had just refined. The color was uniform, and the medicinal fragrance was rich. It could be said to be of superior quality. Your aura seems to be stronger than before? Because Chu Luiyue had been carrying a yuan item that concealed her aura. Even Elder Wanzheng couldn't clearly determine her current level. Chu Luiyue nodded with a smile. I've just broken through to the intermediate stage of the 7th grade. I see. Elder Wanzheng pondered for a moment before smashing his fist into his other palm. He seemed to be itching for action as he asked, "What's the matter? Since you've broken through, why don't you try to refine a 9th grade medicinal pill?" Chu Luiyue was stunned for a moment, but she didn't refuse. "I'll listen to you, master." Elder Wanzheng was very happy to hear that she had agreed. "Don't worry. This is just a try. It doesn't matter if you don't succeed. Since you've finished reading that book, there are some inferior 9th grade medicinal pills in it. Do you like any of them?" Chu Luiyue thought for a moment and chose a simpler one. "I think that the 9 Golden Crossing pill is not bad." 9 Golden Crossing pill? Not bad, not bad. That medicinal pill can help 8th grade cultivators break through their bottleneck and reach the 9th grade. If you can refine it, you can keep it for yourself in the future. Elder Wanzheng felt that this was a good choice and immediately agreed. Its refining method is considered relatively simple among the 9th grade pills. It's just right for me to use it for practice. However, there are a few special medicinal herbs that I don't have here. You can go to the Medicine Wind Valley to get some. Chu Luiyue wanted to say that she had those medicinal herbs, but after thinking for a moment, she swallowed those words. In any case, she still had the 100,000 points that Elder Wanzheng had given her. She hadn't used them yet, and she had been in the academy for a while now. She wanted to take this opportunity to take a look at the Medicine Wind Valley. Yes, Elder Wanzheng confirmed the medicinal herbs that she needed and explained the location of the Medicine Wind Valley in detail before letting her go. Chu Luiyue replied respectfully and headed to the Medicine Wind Valley alone. Lingxiao College was huge. The Medicine Wind Valley was a place where the academy specialized in growing medicinal herbs. It even occupied a large area. Chu Luiyue spent a full hour before she finally arrived. As the name suggested, the Medicine Wind Valley was a canyon. On both sides were undulating mountain peaks. Only in the middle was a concave and winding canyon. Within the canyon, including the mountain peaks on both sides, there were all kinds of medicinal herbs planted. Chu Luiyue stood on one of the mountain peaks and looked down. Although she was mentally prepared, she still couldn't help but be amazed. On the neatly divided plots of land, there were all kinds of treasures of heaven and earth. The colors were gorgeous, and there were all kinds of charm. The air was filled with the rich smell of various herbs mixed together, making people feel intoxicated just by smelling it. Among them, she could see some elders and students. This scene was unexpectedly harmonious and moving. In the middle of the canyon was an empty space. An old man had set up a bed and was lying on it, looking very carefree. Occasionally, someone would go over. Chu Luiyue looked for a while and understood that elder should be in charge of looking after the medicinal herbs of the Medicine Wind Valley. Everyone who wanted to exchange medicinal herbs from the Medicine Wind Valley had to go to him to register. Chu Luiyue flew down. The Medicine Wind Valley was huge, and there were countless types of medicinal herbs planted. Hence, it wasn't easy to accurately find the few medicinal herbs one wanted. Fortunately, Chu Luiyue had already roughly determined the location of 3 medicinal herbs at the beginning. Hence, she found them quickly after going down. There were still 2 left. She started to slowly search for them among the medicinal herbs scattered all over the mountain. Being surrounded by the rich medicinal fragrance, Chu Luiyue couldn't help but take a deep breath. She felt much more refreshed and comfortable. Chu Luiyue didn't lack medicinal herbs. After all, Taizu and Rong Xiu's belongings were all with her. However, looking around, she still saw some precious medicinal herbs that she didn't have. Treasures of heaven and earth that were hard to come by outside seemed to be very common here. The #1 academy in the Divine Ruins world lived up to its name. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1182. Some people would look over from time to time, as if they had recognized Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue ignored all of them and continued to search for the herb she needed. After looking around, she found one. However, she could not find the remaining bone-melting treasured leaf after searching for a long time. The Medicine Wind Valley was really too big, and there were too many types of herbs. The bone-melting treasured leaf was only the size of a fingernail and was very difficult to find. However, this thing had always liked to grow towards the sun, and there was a high chance that it could be found on the sun side of the mountain. Chu Luiyue thought for a while and walked towards the mountain on the left. After walking for a long distance, she finally smelled that familiar faint fishy smell. She was overjoyed. It should be in front. However, just as she was about to take a few quick steps forward to retrieve the bone-melting treasured leaf, a transparent enchantment suddenly appeared in front of her, emitting a faint glow. She stopped in her tracks. "Kid, that is not a place you can go." An old and low voice sounded, as if he had just woken up, and there was even a hint of laziness in it. Chu Luiyue looked at the faintly discernible silver lines on the barrier, as well as that astonishing pressure, and tactfully stopped and looked back. Her current location was very remote, and there was no one around. Looking around, those words seemed to have come from the elder lying in the middle of the Medicine Wind Valley in the distance. There was a very long distance between the two of them, and that elder was still lying on that small broken wooden bed motionless, as if he was sleeping soundly. However, that voice was very clear, as if the person was right beside her. "Kid, what are you looking at?" That voice had a hint of ridicule. Chu Luiyue was sure that the person who spoke was indeed that person. She was secretly surprised. The Medicine Wind Valley was so big, but everything was obviously under the control of that elder. This huge barrier should be his handiwork. She cupped her fists in the direction of that elder and bowed respectfully. "Student Chuyu greets elder. En? Chuyu?" Hearing her words, the elder's voice carried a bit of surprise. Then, Chu Luiyue saw that the elder who had been lying motionless finally sit up. He covered his eyebrows with one hand and glanced over. Even though she couldn't see the other party's face and expression clearly, Chu Luiyue was very sure that the other party was sizing her up with curiosity. "You're the brat who was sent to Pengmin Mountain after just one day?" Chu Luiyue. It turned out that she was already so famous in Lingxiao College. Student is ashamed. She lowered her head slightly. Just now, this student only wanted to take a few pieces of bone-melting precious leaves. "I didn't know that I couldn't go there. I didn't mean to offend you, please forgive me. It's your first time here, so it's normal that you don't know about this." The elder didn't seem to blame Chu Luiyue. Instead he laughed. "However, it seems that Wan Zheng is very satisfied with you. He actually let you come to the Medicine Wind Valley so quickly." The elders were obviously familiar with each other. Chu Luiyue didn't know how to respond for a moment, so she obediently quieted down. The location of the bone-melting precious leaves is indeed strange, but it's still within the boundary. Go and take it, but don't cross the boundary. There was a subtle fluctuation behind her. Chu Luiyue looked back and saw that the light on the boundary had dimmed a lot. It was obvious that the elder had deliberately reduced the power of the boundary. Feeling that the pressure that made her chest feel uncomfortable had been greatly reduced, Chu Luiyue breathed a sigh of relief in her heart. She immediately took a few steps forward and pushed aside a patch of barren grass. Sure enough, she found a few stalks of bone-melting precious leaves in the narrow crack under a huge rock. The leaves were dark green in color and were only the size of a fingernail. The edges were jagged and covered with a faint layer of white frost. They looked crystal clear like green jade. If one looked carefully, one could see the fine veins in the leaves, which looked like a skeleton. Chu Luiyue carefully took a few leaves. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew. The fine strands of hair on her forehead fell down, making her cheeks slightly itchy. She straightened her back and inadvertently looked forward. Suddenly her eyes focused. After the power of the boundary was greatly reduced, the scene that was originally blurry became much clearer. This also allowed her to see the scenery that she had not noticed before. In the distance, there seemed to be a dark blue lake. The lake water was clear, and there was a faint layer of white mist on the surface of the lake, adding a bit of hazy beauty. However, This was not the reason why Chu Luiyue was so shocked. She frowned slightly, her eyes fixed on the translucent pink flowers blooming on the surface of the lake, and waves rose in her heart. That was dancing lotus. Large patches of dancing lotus swayed gently on the surface of the lake, as if it was a paradise. The dancing lotus was extremely precious and difficult to cultivate. Even Chu Luiyue did not dare to guarantee that she could cultivate a dancing lotus. Thinking back to the time when she wanted to get that one, she went through many twists and turns. And now, there were so many of them here. Just as Chu Luiyue was shocked, a wave of light flashed in front of her eyes, and a strong pressure attacked her. She suddenly came back to her senses, and quickly took a few steps back. When she looked up again, the boundary had returned to its original appearance. However, the lake and the blooming dancing lotuses that he had seen just now had already become blurry and disappeared. For a moment, Chu Luiyue almost suspected that she was hallucinating. However, the faintly discernible fragrance lingering on the tip of her nose reminded her that everything was real. "Kid, you have taken the things and it's time to go." The elder's voice fell in her ears. Chu Luiyue pursed her lips, retracted her gaze, and turned to walk in the direction of the elder. After passing through half of the Medicine Wind Valley, Chu Luiyue finally arrived at the center. She bowed respectfully. "Student greets elder." Elder Mengye's hair was a little messy. He was dressed in a white robe, barefoot, and sat lazily on the small broken wooden bed. One leg was stretched out, the other was bent, and his elbow was on his knee very casually. He opened a pair of small eyes and looked up and down at Chu Luiyue. "TSK, you look quite obedient, but your courage is very big." He chuckled and asked ambiguously, "Did you see anything just now?" Chu Luiyue paused and shook her head. "Student didn't see anything." Tisk. Elder Mengyi picked up a piece of wood in his hand and knocked it directly on Chu Luiyue's forehead. "You're so young and you're still not telling the truth. This old man won't eat you." Chu Luiyue hissed and answered honestly, "I'm sorry." Student knows her mistake. Student just saw a patch of blooming dancing lotus. "Is there anything else?" "No." Elder Mengyi was satisfied and snorted softly. "That's more like it. In this Medicine Wind Valley, no one is allowed to be secretive with this old man. Do you understand?" Chu Luiyue said sincerely, "Thank you for your teachings, elder. By the way, you don't have to tell Wanzheng about this when you go back." Chu Luiyue was stunned. Why? Elder Mengyi snorted softly. "That herb garden is. Forget it, forget it. Why are you asking these questions? Just remember this old man's words." Chu Luiyue's heart suddenly jumped. Herb garden? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1183. The elders and students of the academy all needed herbs from the Medicine Wind Valley to refine pills. In the entire academy, only one person had her own herb garden. That student whose name was erased from the Azure Sky Roll. In that case, that herb garden belonged to that person? Chu Luiyue thought to herself. Previously, she had only heard Zhongsun mention that the dean had specially dug out a piece of land from the Medicine Wind Valley for that student to use as her herb garden. And that place was off limits to others. Chu Luiyue had originally thought that it was hidden in some secret place, but she did not expect that it was right beside the Medicine Wind Valley. It was just that the elders had used a barrier to separate it, so the people in the Medicine Wind Valley were unable to detect it. Chu Luiyue recalled that when she had first arrived, she had stood at the top of the mountain and looked around. At that time, she did not see any extra boundaries. Now that she thought about it, that herb garden should have been concealed by some special means. Originally, Chu Luiyue did not have much interest in that herb garden, but when she saw the large expanse of blooming dancing lotuses, she suddenly felt extremely curious and wanted to investigate. She also could not say where this feeling came from. It was as if there was something hidden inside that had an inexplicable attraction to her. But these were only thoughts that flashed through Chu Luiyue's mind. She lowered her eyes. Elder is right. This student will definitely keep it in mind. Elder Mengyi liked this attitude very much. He laughed mischievously. All right. You don't need to be nervous. You are Wan Zheng's disciple after all. This face has to be given. Right. Let's calculate the points for these things. He pointed to the side with his mouth. Only then did Chu Luiyue see a green jade token hanging at the head of the bed. Thinking about it, it should be his. Just put your black jade token on it. Chu Luiyue obediently did as she was told. The moment the two tokens touched, a white light flashed. Chu Luiyue clearly saw that the number on it had changed from 6 to 5. She immediately felt her heart ache. So expensive. These few herbs were not ordinary items, so the price was naturally not cheap. Fortunately, these were given by Elder Wan Zheng, so they were still acceptable. In the future, she would definitely have to pay for it herself. Chu Luiyue took back her black jade token and bowed to bid farewell. After her figure disappeared from the Medicine Wind Valley, Elder Mengyi stroked his beard and lay back down. He crossed his legs and swung his feet. Why does he look so familiar? Chu Luiyue returned with the herbs. Elder Wan Zheng, when he saw her return, he smiled. Everything went well. Chu Luiyue said. I didn't let Master down. I've brought everything back. Elder Wan Zheng counted the items and nodded in satisfaction. He then asked, What are you doing? Medicine Wind Valley. Chu Luiyue pondered for a while and said seriously, Sect is a place. Ha 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 ha, Elder Wan Zheng laughed loudly. Not. It is indeed a place full of spirit and beauty. Chu Luiyue's eyes flickered slightly. To be able to cultivate so many heavenly treasures at the same time. The existence of the Medicine Wind Valley itself was a miracle. Only the Lingxiao College, with its 10,000 years of heritage, could have such a deep and long heritage. There are a lot of good things in there. If you want to refine pills in the future, just go there and take the herbs. Chu Luiyue's eyes lit up, but quickly dimmed again. Elder Wan Zheng sharply caught the change in her expression and couldn't help but ask, Why? Is there a problem? Chu Luiyue smiled embarrassedly. Many of the herbs in the Medicine Wind Valley require a lot of points. So it was because of this. Elder Wan Zheng reacted and waved his hand casually. I thought it was something serious. Isn't it just points? As long as you can quickly break through to become a 9th grade celestial physician and enter the green cloud role, I will definitely prepare a generous gift for you. During this period, if you need any herbs, just let me know. They are all public funds. Deduct them from me. What were points? With such a rare genius disciple, who knew how many people would be envious to death. He had waited for so long and finally found a good disciple. How could he not do his best to nurture her? In comparison, wasn't it normal to waste some points and use some medicinal herbs? His heroic words immediately made Chu Luiyue energized. Master, are you serious? Elder Wan Zheng pretended to be angry and glared at her. How could Master lie to you when you say that? Don't worry. Chu Luiyue smiled until her eyes curved into crescents, and her starry eyes sparkled. Then I will thank you in advance, Master. Elder Wan Zheng waved his hand. Come. Let me see if you can refine a 9th grade pill. Chu Luiyue nodded, walked to the side of the cauldron, and arranged the herbs in order. Bang! She slapped her hands on the mouth of the cauldron. 2 clusters of red flames instantly surged out. The entire cauldron was filled. Boom! The flames burned fiercely. The surrounding temperature also rose by a lot in an instant. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath and calmed herself down. Then she methodically placed the herbs in one by one to refine. All kinds of herbs gathered in the flames of the cauldron. Elder Wan Zheng looked at her smooth and skillful movements from the side and felt a wave of excitement in his heart. When he said that he wanted Chu Yu to enter the green cloud role within 2 to 3 months, many people expressed their doubts. This time, he must let his precious disciple blind their eyes. He yelled heroically, You're so lucky. Disciple. Refine well. Refine without worry. With Master backing you, you can refine however you want. Digression. 3 seconds of silence for Elder Wan Zheng. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1184. With that, Chu Luiyue was relieved. Such an opportunity was hard to come by. Of course, she had to cherish it. Hence, she quickly recalled the herbs she had seen in the Medicine Wind Valley today. After doing some calculations, she finally came to a conclusion. She had struck it rich this time. Even if it was because Elder Wan Zheng was willing to spend so much money, she had to refine the pills properly this time. Thousands of miles away, in the dark feather abyss, surrounded by mountains, it was verdant and rich. In the middle was an azure water body. Countless trees grew in it, adding to the beautiful greenery. The sky and water merged into one. The tree branches swayed, and water poured down from one direction, forming a faint silver waterfall. It was like a river flowing through the forest. It was magnificent and wonderful. This was an extremely special place in the Divine Ruins world. It was said that thousands of years ago, there was once a king of equipment refinement, who had successfully refined a king's source tool here. It was a pity that he had exhausted all his strength and essence chi. Not long after he had refined it, he had died. That king's source tool had been lost in the dark feather abyss since then, and its whereabouts were unknown. For thousands of years, countless cultivators from the Divine Ruins world had come here. They had dug 3 feet into the ground to find that king's source tool. However, the dark feather abyss was full of danger. Cultivators had died here one after another, but no one had found that item. Gradually, the number of people who came here decreased. However, in recent months, strange phenomena had occurred in the dark feather abyss. Many people guessed that the king's source tool was about to be born. Hence, everyone was shocked. Many forces were eager to take advantage of this opportunity, to take it for themselves. Originally, the Spirit Firmament Academy rarely participated in such matters. However, it was different this time. That was because the king of equipment refinement, who had died here back then, was from Lingxiao College. Hence, this time, a team formed by several elders and students had made preparations and come here. Rong Xiao and the others had been waiting here for a full 10 days. During this process, there were still people coming from all over. Some people wanted to retreat when they saw Lingxiao College's team. In the end, they tactfully chose to leave. But there was still a part that remained. It was true that Lingxiao College was the #1 college in the Divine Ruins world. And it was also true that Rong Xiao and the others were backed by extraordinary first-rate families. But even so, it was not enough to dismiss everyone. After all, the Yuntian Tower was not the only first-rate family in the Divine Ruins. Moreover, with benefits in front of them, who would care about such things? At this time, everyone had gathered at Dark Feather's Abyss, waiting for the appearance of the legendary King Yuan device. It has already been so long. Other than the occasional strange phenomenon in the sky, there has been no reaction from below. I don't know when that treasure will appear. A young woman's voice came from the crowd of Lingxiao College students. It's a king-grade origin tool after all, so it's only natural that it would take a lot of effort. He had already waited for thousands of years. What was a little bit more to him? Someone beside him consoled him. Yeah, it has been a long time since a Yuan tool of this level has appeared in the Divine Ruins world. Moreover, this belongs to a senior elder of our academy. No matter how long it takes, we still have to wait. Not only do we have to wait, but we also have to successfully bring that thing back. Otherwise, wouldn't this trip be a waste? It would be embarrassing for the academy. They discussed in low voices. However, Rong Xiao did not say anything from the beginning to the end. He just stood at the side and waited patiently. He wore a snow-white brocade robe and stood tall and straight. He seemed to be quietly admiring the scenery of Dark Feather's Abyss. But if one looked closely, they would see that the surrounding heaven and earth origin force was quickly and silently surging into his body. This was something that his companions had already noticed on the way here. But every time they saw it, they could not help but feel shocked. Only a person who had completely stepped into the god level could do this. But he was still able to do it so smoothly and casually. It was so easy that it was hard for others to even feel jealous. When a person was slightly more outstanding than the people around them, they would often be envied and even ostracized. But if the difference was so great that they could only look up to him, then those emotions would turn into admiration and admiration. Rong Xiao was the second type. It was not that no one wanted to surpass him, but it was just too difficult. Rongxiu has left the academy for a few years, right? I didn't expect his strength to increase so quickly. Even some of the academy's elders might not be his match now, right? Didn't they say that the Yuntian Tower has been in chaos these past few years? I thought he would be busy dealing with these matters, and would not have the time and energy to cultivate properly. Who knew? Now that the Yuntian Tower is in his hands, his strength has increased greatly. How did he do it? You're asking me? If I knew, would I still be like this? The group of people roared with laughter, and the atmosphere was quite harmonious. But sometimes, there were people who liked to ruin such an atmosphere. He just broke through to the god level a step earlier. What's there to be suspicious about? Wei Shiping's face was cold, and his voice was laced with sarcasm. The surrounding people gradually quieted down. Many people looked at each other and secretly exchanged glances. A young woman smiled and said, "That's easy. Wei Shiping, you're a famous genius cultivator. Don't tell me you don't know how difficult it is to break through to the god level a step earlier?" They were about the same age, and they had entered the academy at the same time. But now, Rongxiu had broken through to the god level, and they could only look up to him. The gap between them was getting wider and wider. How could they not be moved? Wei Shiping gritted his teeth and did not reply. He thought to himself, when I have the chance, I'll teach Rongxiu a lesson. This time, when the King Source tool appeared, I must get it before Rongxiu. Rongxiu was completely oblivious to all the discussions. He kept devouring the force of heaven and earth around him to strengthen his cultivation base. At the same time, he looked down at the scenery below and around him. His handsome and devilish face was expressionless. No one knew what he was thinking. Rumble. A loud noise suddenly came from the sky. The originally noisy discussions all disappeared. Everyone raised their heads to look. In the originally cloudless sky, dark clouds were rapidly gathering. The wind howled and thunder rumbled. The sky quickly darkened. It's for real this time. That thing is about to appear. On a mountain peak not far away, a burly man with dark skin laughed. Just in time. Let me see how big of a commotion this King Source tool can cause. Rongxiu looked up as well. His deep eyes were calm and unfathomable. Rumble. Tianlei landed. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from LoveNet. Chapter 1185. The waterfall below gradually stopped flowing. A whirlpool appeared in the center of the blue water. As time passed, the whirlpool gradually expanded and swallowed all the trees in the surroundings silently. At the same time, the dark clouds in the sky seemed to be attracted by some kind of force and started to rotate slowly, forming a huge storm. Between heaven and earth there was darkness. The wind howled, and the pressure was heavy. The people waiting on the peaks of the dark feather abyss were all energized. Judging from the situation, the King Yuan artifact was about to appear. When all the water in the water is sucked dry, that will be the time when the King Yuan artifact appears. At that time, we must act quickly and snatch the artifact before anyone else. Elder Xu Feng instructed seriously. Everyone nodded their heads and waited for the battle to begin. Time passed slowly. Under the whirlpool, there seemed to be a black hole that kept swallowing everything around it. The storm in the sky also gradually came down. Countless pairs of eyes stared at this scene. At a certain moment, just as the whirlpool was about to disappear, the storm hit. The two collided. Boom! A loud sound came from within. The next moment, a dazzling light burst out from within. Now, Elder Shufeng gave the order and took the lead to charge out. The people behind him also moved out. At the same time, the people waiting at the dark feather abyss all rushed over. Lingxiao College was actually the fastest. Seeing that they were about to take the lead, the others started to panic. The dark-skinned brawny man who spoke earlier suddenly shouted in a deep voice. Everyone, let's join forces. Elder Xu Feng and the others' hearts sank when they heard this. Sure enough, the man then shouted again. Hey! This treasure was left behind by the people of the Spirit Firmament Academy back then. If they want to snatch it, it will be much easier for them than for us. Why don't we join forces to defeat them first, and then decide who the treasure belongs to? His voice was deep and full of energy. As soon as he opened his mouth, his voice spread out between the heavens and the earth. Many people hesitated for a moment and looked at each other with complicated expressions. Elder Shu Feng shouted angrily, "Golden Wing Sect! How dare you?" The man laughed out loud. "I've already dared to steal from you in front of you. What's there to be afraid of?" Their Golden Wing Sect was also a first-rate sect in the Divine Ruins world. Moreover, they had a deep foundation and were full of confidence. Lingxiao College had a prestigious status, but it was just a college after all. It was true that there were many experts, but it was still different from the orthodox sects and aristocratic families. After all, it was impossible for Lingxiao College to have all the elders and students risk their lives for the school. Moreover, even though the treasure that had appeared today was a rarely seen king-grade origin tool, it definitely wasn't enough for Lingxiao College to fall out with everyone because of it. That was why they dared to snatch it so brazenly. In addition, there were other people present, so they were even more unscrupulous. "Everyone, what are you hesitating for? Since you're already here, do you intend to watch the treasure fall into the hands of others?" This sentence finally made the people from the other sects and clans make up their minds. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Those who had originally planned to charge toward the center had all turned around and were heading toward the people from Lingxiao College. Other than Lingxiao College, there was also the Four Directions sect here. Their numbers added up to almost 180 people, which was several times more than Lingxiao Academy's side. Even if the people from Lingxiao College were all quite strong, they wouldn't be able to withstand the siege of so many people. After all, if they dared to openly oppose them, their strength wouldn't be too weak. If they were to fight against them, they would definitely lose today's battle. Several groups of people surrounded the Spirit Firmament Academy, trapping them within. Elder Shu Feng's mind raced as he looked at Rongxiao. "Rongxiao, we'll hold them back. Find an opportunity to retrieve that item." Rongxiao nodded slightly. "Huh, do you think it's that easy to dodge?" The man sneered and charged toward Rongxiao. "I'll take you on first." Rongxiao raised his eyes slightly. His expression was cold, and there was no emotion in the depths of his eyes. In the next moment, his figure suddenly vanished on the spot. What? Not only the man who was about to fight Rongxiao, but also the other people who were watching were all shocked. They weren't shocked that Rongxiao knew how to teleport, but they were shocked that he could still move so easily and freely under such strong suppression. There were quite a number of great gods present. Even if they were all great gods, they might not be able to escape so quickly. The next moment, Rongxiao appeared behind the crowd. He was only a short distance away from the dazzling ball of light. The man from the Golden Wing sect was the first to react. He shouted, "Stop him." Elder Shufeng ordered, "Let's go." Go. The two sides clashed and quickly descended into a chaotic battle. A few cold gusts of wind came from behind, but Rongxiao did not turn around. He quickly dodged them and easily avoided them. In the blink of an eye, he was already at the location of the storm. Standing there, everything was presented clearly in front of his eyes. The water from before had disappeared, and there was only a huge black vortex spinning slowly above the swamp-like wetland. It was dark and bottomless. Looking down from above, it looked like a giant beast with its bloody mouth wide open. Once one fell into it, endless torture and death awaited them. At this moment, the storm formed by the gathering dark clouds in the sky had already connected with the vortex. The grayish-black storm was also gradually being swallowed by the black hole. At the point where the two connected, there was a ball of light that was emitting a dazzling light. It was only the size of a person's head, and its light was soft and bright. It was exuding a vast and divine aura. Rongxiao stared at it, and a look of surprise flashed across his eyes. This aura, it doesn't seem to be a king-grade yuan device. Die! Rongxiao's momentary daze gave the people behind him an opportunity to attack. The difference in numbers was too great. Even though the people from Lingxiao College had already done their best, they were gradually at a disadvantage. Some people took the opportunity to break through their defense line and went straight for Rongxiu. Sensing the cold aura behind him, Rongxiu's expression turned cold, and a murderous intent flashed across his eyes. He did not turn around. He only raised his hand and waved it. A golden light flew out. It formed an extremely sturdy barrier around him. The muscular man, who was originally confident of victory, suddenly changed his expression. You! At this moment, Rongxiu had already rushed forward and grabbed the ball of light. Pfft! Elder Shufeng could not fight against 4 hands with 2 fists, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. However, he immediately noticed the commotion on Rongxiu's side, and he couldn't help but be elated. He endured the bloody smell in his mouth and hollered. Activate the formation. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1186. The elders at the side moved simultaneously. Chi-chi. Rays of brilliant light flew out and intertwined in midair. In the blink of an eye, they formed a huge Xian formation. A faint suppressive aura spread out from it. The surrounding space was distorted, and several black spatial cracks appeared. They're leaving. Suddenly, someone exclaimed loudly. The man from the Golden Wing sect looked at Rongxiu with anger and jealousy. However, for some reason, he did not move forward, as if he was afraid of something. Hearing that shout, he hesitated for a moment and turned around. Destroy their Xian formation. Everyone knew that once the Xian formation was completed, the people from Lingxiao College would be able to escape quickly. At that time, it would be even more difficult for them to stop them. Everyone attacked together. Elder Shufeng and the rest did not care about their own safety, and increased the speed of building the Xian formation. The Xian formation was complicated and beautiful. As the patterns on it were completed, the aura on it became stronger. I'd like to see how you're going to go back today. With a low shout, the man from the Golden Wing sect suddenly leaped up. He held a huge black axe in his hand and slashed it down fiercely. Crack! A crack appeared on the Xian formation. Terrifying energy surged out from the crack. It scattered in all directions. The faces of Elder Shufeng and the others turned pale. If the Xian formation was destroyed, they would not be able to rush back to the academy in time. With so many people attacking them, they would definitely be defeated. He was furious and looked at the man. Jean Lei, do you really want to go against Lingxiao College? Jean Lei laughed. Elder Shufeng, please don't misunderstand. At the end of the day, all we want is that King Source tool. As long as you hand it over, I promise to let you go immediately. Furthermore, I'll personally come and apologize to you on another day. Elder Shufeng was so angry that he laughed. This thing originally belonged to Lingxiao College. You've gone overboard by snatching it so brazenly. Do you still want us to hand it over? 1,000 years have passed. Jean Lei interrupted him with an arrogant look on his face. This thing was not refined in your Spirit Firmament Academy. Even the weapon refining king from back then had fallen here. Not even his bones were left. Then, how can this treasure belong to your academy? Since it's an ownerless item, what's wrong with us snatching it? You're being unreasonable. Elder Shu shouted. Stabilize the Xian formation. Jean Lei raised the axe in his hand again. Everyone lend me a hand. There was already a crack in the Xian formation. If there was another crack, it would definitely collapse completely. The others also seemed to have seen a glimmer of hope. They all revealed excited expressions and poured their origin power into the axes. A terrifying power surged forth. Heaven and earth. The sweet and fishy taste in Elder Estranged Wind's mouth became even thicker. The rest of the people's Lingxiao College. Right at this moment, a golden streak of light flew over. Of the Xian were of the sun. Of following this buzzing sound, the Xian formation that was on the verge of collapse quickly recovered. The golden light also quickly split into many small branches that spread to the surroundings. In an instant, it covered more than half of the Xian formation. Seeing this scene, even the people from the Spirit Firmament Academy were shocked. Rongxiu had dabbled in Xian masters, but he had always been outstanding as a martial artist and an instrument refiner. Therefore, everyone had always thought that although his comprehension of Xian masters was also very good, it could not be compared to his other two talents. But now, they realized that Rong Xiu had already become a top-notch expert in Xian masters. This Xian formation was successfully constructed with the combined efforts of so many people. Rong Xiu had actually repaired the Xian formation that was on the verge of collapse with his own strength, and completed the remaining parts. Wei Shiping looked at the man who was floating in midair with his clothes fluttering in the wind. His white clothes fluttered like an immortal, but he was so powerful that people could only look up to him. Rong Xiu, was the gap between them already so big? He clenched his teeth and lowered his eyes to hide the unwillingness and jealousy that flashed across his eyes. At this moment, the Xian formation was finally completed. Elder Xu Feng immediately shouted, "Open!" Following his command, a huge crack suddenly appeared in the sky above the brilliant Xian formation. "Rong Xiu, let's go!" Elder Xu Feng anxiously shouted. Rong Xiu took a step forward, and his figure quickly disappeared into the crack. Then, the Lingxiao College students followed suit. Seeing them leave one by one, Jin Lei could not help but grip the axe in his hand tightly, and was about to rush forward. "Chase!" The people behind him hurriedly dissuaded him. "No! This Xian formation has torn space. The other end must be Lingxiao College. We can't go there." "That's right. We can still fight them here. But if we go to their territory, I'm afraid." Everyone was discussing and expressing their opposition. Jin Lei's face darkened. If they let them leave with the Emperor-grade Yuan tool, they would not be willing to do so. There's a special barrier outside Lingxiao College. It's heavily guarded, and no one is allowed to enter or leave as they wish. I'm guessing that they're going to return to Fangzhou first. As long as they can make it in time, it's not impossible. He looked around and scanned the crowd with his cold eyes. Suddenly he sneered. "Have you forgotten? That's a Emperor-grade Yuan tool. Since we've already offended Lingxiao College, what's the difference?" His words made many people waver. After all, the Emperor-grade Yuan tool was too tempting. "Look, that Xian formation doesn't seem to be closed properly." Someone suddenly cried out in alarm. Everyone, including Jin Lei, looked over and saw that the crack suddenly paused, just as it was about to close. Jin Lei did not hesitate at all. In a flash he followed the person. Naturally, the people from Golden Wing sect followed closely behind. The remaining people looked at each other and hesitated for a moment. A middle-aged man suddenly shouted, "Let's go. We've already offended them. If we give up now, we'll be giving the treasure to Golden Wing sect for nothing." After saying that, he immediately moved. Everyone was already tempted. After hearing what he said, they no longer hesitated and rushed forward. Lingxiao College. Chu Luiyue was refining pills halfway up the mountain. Elder Wan Zheng was standing beside him. The surroundings were quiet, and the atmosphere was tense. Chu Luiyue's previous 2 attempts had failed. This was already his 3rd attempt. However, Elder Wan Zheng was not too worried. It was not easy to break through from an 8th-grade celestial physician to a 9th-grade celestial physician. If Chu Luiyue succeeded on his first try, it would be too strange. The process was very smooth, and he was about to reach the final step. Chu Luiyue held his breath and controlled the flames in the cauldron to fuse all the herbs together. Boom! The flames burned even more fiercely. However, at this moment, Elder Wan Zheng's expression suddenly changed. He turned around and looked in the direction of the entrance of the college. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1187. There was quite a distance between here and there, but Elder Wan Zheng was still sensitive enough to detect a dangerous aura. His brows furrowed tightly, and he was about to leave, but after taking half a step, he suddenly remembered that Chu Luiyue was refining pills beside him. He forcefully suppressed the waves in his heart. After thinking about it, he still decided to stay here and wait for Chu Luiyue to finish refining the pills. Even if the academy was really in danger, there were other elders around. It wouldn't hurt to be a little late. On the other hand, Chu Luiyue was at the crucial moment of refining the pills. It wouldn't be good if they were to interrupt her. Chu Luiyue also realized that something was wrong with him. She turned her gaze and looked at him. His face was filled with anticipation and excitement, but now it was filled with nervousness and worry. Her heart also sank slightly. Master, what's wrong? Elder Wanjun quickly shook his head. Nothing, nothing. Just concentrate on refining the pills. Master is here to help you. Don't be distracted. It's almost done. Chu Luiyue didn't believe him. She had been in the academy for quite some time, but she had never seen Elder Wanjun with such an expression. She wanted to ask again, but after thinking about it, she held back and put her attention back on refining the pills. In the flames, a fist-sized pill had already appeared. Feeling the power contained in it, Chu Luiyue was slightly relieved. This time she might really succeed. Although she was a 9th-grade celestial physician, she couldn't help but feel excited and happy to be able to climb up this ladder after her rebirth. Every day since she was reborn, she hoped that she could return to her peak and even become stronger. She didn't expect that the first to succeed would be a celestial physician. She held her breath and became more careful. Elder Wanjun, who was at the side, still couldn't completely relax. From time to time, he would look in that direction. The academy's operation this time was confidential. Even some elders weren't clear about it. It showed how important this matter was to everyone. Calculating the time, they had been gone for more than 20 days. It was normal for them to return at this time. But that fluctuation, it was obviously strange and uneasy. Whoosh, whoosh. In midair, several figures flashed past. Those were obviously the elders who had sensed that something was wrong and hurried over. Elder Wanjun slowly clenched his fists. Chu Luiyue frowned slightly. She originally also wanted to concentrate on refining pills, but that subtle change in aura on Elder Wanjun's body seriously made her unable to ignore it. She stared intently at the pill in the cauldron, carefully controlling the flame to condense it, and said, Master, if there's really something urgent, you can go first. Anyway, I'm almost done here. That won't do. I want to see it personally. You don't have to care about those things, just focus on refining pills. Elder Wanjun was very insistent. Chu Luiyue had no choice but to swallow the rest of his words. However, he was getting more and more curious. For Elder Wanjun to be so worried, it must not be a small matter. Just now, a few elders had already flown over the sky. It seemed like they were heading towards the entrance of the academy. Could it be that someone had barged in to cause trouble? However, as soon as this thought appeared, it was dispelled by Chu Luiyue. This was Lingxiao College. Who would have the guts to cause trouble here? Wouldn't that be causing trouble for themselves? The red flame continued to burn, and the pill in it gradually condensed. A medicinal fragrance wafted from it. Elder Wanjun's eyes lit up. He could not help but take a step forward and clasped his hands tightly in front of him. Was this the bout to succeed? Whoosh! Another silhouette flew across the sky. Elder Wanjun instantly felt as if he had been hit by a bucket of cold water. It seemed that the situation was worse than expected. His brows were tightly knitted together as he stared at Chu Luiyue and the pill in front of her. He did not blink, and his heart was beating rapidly. At this moment, time seemed to pass exceptionally slowly. The medicinal fragrance of the pill was getting stronger. Chu Luiyue held her breath and activated the force in her body. It transformed into flames and surged out crazily. Buzz! A strong wave of energy circulated in the cauldron. Chu Luiyue's heart calmed down. The pill was about to be formed. She slammed her hand on the cauldron. The flame exploded. The pill in the middle became rounder and rounder. Lines and lines began to appear clearly on the surface. Chu Luiyue's lips were already a little pale. To the current her, it was indeed a little difficult to concoct a 9th-grade medicinal pill. After this round of refining, she had basically used up all her strength. In addition, she had already failed twice before, so she had even less energy left. Therefore, this pill was really hard to come by. Waves of weakness assaulted her, almost making her legs go soft. She bit the tip of her tongue and used the sharp pain to force herself to be clear-headed. The faint smell of blood spread between her lips and teeth. However, Chu Luiyue did not care about that at this moment. As long as she could successfully refine the pill, Elder Wanjun's promise would be fulfilled. Thinking of this, she used all her strength to send the last bit of strength in her body into the cauldron and merged it with the flame. Whoosh! The pill suddenly flew up. It seemed to want to escape. Chu Luyue clenched her teeth and controlled it. As long as she could hold on a little longer, this pill would. Wanzheng, why are you still here? Feng Zhou is already in a mess. An anxious voice suddenly sounded. It was Elder Huafeng who had rushed over. That thing is now on Rongxiu, and it's being besieged by them. Bang! An explosive sound came from Chu Luyue's cauldron. Black ashes scattered in all directions. A thick burnt smell filled the air. Chu Luyue's pill was destroyed. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1188. This explosion successfully attracted Elder Huafeng's attention to Chu Luyue's existence. The main reason was that things happened too quickly. He was so anxious that he directly spoke when he saw Elder Wanzheng. He didn't see that Chu Luyue was beside him. The scene fell silent. Only the smell of burnt flesh spread out, indicating what had just happened. Chu Luyue looked at the extinguished medicinal cauldron in front of her with a heavy gaze. The inside and the edges were all black. Just a step away. Even the lines on the cauldron were about to be drawn. Her hands slowly clenched. The atmosphere became tense and subtle. Only then did Elder Huafeng realize that he seemed to have done something wrong. He opened his mouth and looked at Elder Wanzheng nervously. Did I come at the wrong time? Elder Wanzheng glanced at him faintly. Was there a need to ask? That kid was about to succeed just now. He had been suppressing himself and patiently waiting for Chu Yu to successfully refine a 9th-grade medicinal pill. But now, all his efforts were in vain. Chu Yu. Elder Huafeng also felt a little embarrassed. Just as he was about to explain, he saw that the young man had already turned around. His usually delicate and gentle face no longer had the usual smile. Instead, there was an inexplicable coldness. Elder Huafeng. The young man said coldly. Elder Huafeng's heart trembled inexplicably as he subconsciously responded. Sai, you just said that Feng Zhou is in chaos? Rongxiu, senior brother Rongxiu, and the others are being besieged? Yes. Why do you ask this? Elder Huafeng originally thought that she was angry because the pill was destroyed and wanted to argue with him. He didn't expect that she would ask this question. He didn't think much and nodded. But after saying that, he thought that it wasn't good to let the students know about this matter. So he added, but don't worry, we're going over now. There won't be any big problems. As he said that, he looked at Elder Wanzheng and gave him a look. Elder Wanzheng sighed in his heart. Chu Yu, you go back first. As for the matters outside, we will take care of them. Chu Luyue narrowed his eyes. If the matter could be resolved so easily, Elder Huafeng wouldn't have been so nervous when he came, and he wouldn't have said such words. Now all these were just to comfort her. However, she did not reveal these thoughts. She only pretended to believe him, and let out a sigh of relief. That's good, I thought. Actually, Master wanted to leave just now, but I was delayed because I was refining pills. She looked at Elder Wanzheng. Master, you should hurry up and take a look with Elder Huafeng. Elder Wanzheng sighed. All right. It's a pity that your pill today could have been completed. Chu Luyue smiled. This student has already grasped the knack of it. Sooner or later, I will succeed. You don't have to worry. But your previous promise still stands, right? Elder Wanzheng saw that she had a good attitude and didn't blame the heavens for this failure. He was even more impressed. Of course it still counts. Moreover, Elder Huafeng is partly responsible for today's matter. In the future, he will give you some points as compensation. Elder Huafeng didn't know what the master and disciple were up to, but it seemed to be just giving points. It wasn't a big deal, so he immediately agreed. That's right. I will definitely compensate you when I come back. The smile on Chu Luyue's lips deepened as she bowed respectfully. Then this student won't delay master any longer. I will take my leave first. Elder Wanzheng thought that she wanted to go back and think about refining pills, so he agreed directly. Thinking that there were still some troublesome matters outside that had not been dealt with, the two elders quickly left. Soon, only Chu Luyue was left on the mountain. When the two elders disappeared, The smile on Chu Liyue's face gradually disappeared. There seemed to be a dark tide surging in her black jade-like eyes. Fangzhou City. Someone actually dared to come here and look for trouble with Lingxiao College? The key was, what is that thing? Because it was on Rongxiao. So Rongxiao's situation wasn't optimistic? She turned around and walked down the mountain. Fangzhou. In midair, several groups of people were in a stalemate. Rongxiao stood in the middle, surrounded by people from the Golden Wing sect and other sections. On the outer layer, there was Elder Xu Feng and the others, as well as the people from Lingxiao College who were rushing over. And at this time, the number of people was still increasing. In the city below, countless people raised their heads to watch, their hearts and minds trembling. Who would have thought that they would be able to see such a scene in Fangzhou City outside Lingxiao College? Those people in the sky were all experts from the top sects in the Divine Ruins world. And now, the focus of their battle was obviously Rongxiao. Elder Xu Feng and the others had ugly expressions. According to the previous plan, as long as they activated the Xian formation, they could directly create a teleportation array and return to the college directly. They didn't expect these people to follow them here like maggots. Jinlei and the others were not in a good mood either. They wanted to take down Rongxiao in Fangzhou City as soon as possible and take back the thing. Who knew that Rongxiao's fighting strength was so strong that he had dragged it out until now? More and more people came out of Lingxiao College and gathered here. If this continued, their situation would only get worse. They had to end the battle quickly, but both sides were afraid, so they were in an awkward situation. Finally, Jinlei raised the axe in his hand and thunder roared under his feet. He went straight for Rongxiao. Everyone attacked together. Finish him. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1189. Inside Lingxiao College, many elders gathered together and headed to Fangzhou together. The atmosphere in the entire academy quietly became tense. When Chu Liyue rushed to the entrance of the college, she saw that many students had already gathered around the Qingming Square. Obviously, they already knew that something was going on outside. Chu Liyue slowed down her footsteps and blended into the crowd, so she didn't stand out. Many students were whispering to each other. Have you heard? Something seems to have happened outside. Someone seems to have come to Fangzhou to cause trouble? I heard that Elder Xu Feng and the others are now fighting with them outside. Some of the elders in the college have also rushed over. Who exactly is it that has the guts to actually barge into our academy? It seems that there are people from the Golden Wing sect. They have never interacted with our college and are extremely arrogant just because they are powerful. And this time, it seems that they are trying to steal something. Other than that, a few other sects have joined forces. Even if they want to steal something, they don't have to kill their way here, right? Aren't they just looking for trouble? Do they really think that our college is a pushover? It seems that they are after an extremely precious treasure. Previously, senior brother Rongxiao and the others came back to retrieve this item for the college. Just now, I accidentally heard an elder say that because of this item, senior brother Rongxiao was besieged by them. I don't know how he is now. After all, they are just outside our college. We can't really let them succeed, right? All kinds of discussions entered Chu Liyue's ears, causing her to become more and more agitated. Her brows were tightly knitted together. It turned out that Lingxiao College had sent a letter to Rongxiao to talk about this matter. Rongxiao had never mentioned it, so she didn't ask in detail. After all, there were so many people moving together, and there were many elders in the college. Logically speaking, there shouldn't be any danger. But now Rongxiao was clearly in danger. Her heart was filled with anxiety, but she could only console herself. After all, they had already arrived at Fangzhou City, right next to the academy. Even if they really encountered danger, they would still have the support of so many elders from the academy. Since Elder Hua Feng and the others had already rushed over, they should be able to make it in time. More and more students gathered around. The originally quiet Qingming Square became noisy. Chu Liyue calmly walked in that direction, while thinking about how to quietly go out and take a look. Although the academy's barrier was heavily guarded, knowing that Rongxiu was in danger, she couldn't help but worry. Chuyu. A familiar voice came from the side. Chu Liyue frowned and stood still. When he raised his head, his expression had returned to normal. Zhuosheng Shishir, why are you here? In addition to these two people, Luo Yinming was also beside them. The cultivation of these three people was different, so it was rare to see them together. Zhuosheng winked. Why do you think we're here? Of course it's the same as you. Luo Shishir patiently explained. We were originally cultivating with Master, but something happened at the last minute. Master left, so we came here. We just happened to meet fifth brother. The master she was talking about was Elder Wenxi. Chu Liyue nodded. I was refining medicine just now. An Elder Huafeng came over and called Master to leave together. In fact, many students were in this situation. Therefore, Luo Shishir and the others didn't think much of Chu Liyue's explanation. Did you hear what those people said just now? Zhuosheng asked mysteriously. How dare they chase us to Fangzhou to rob us? Are they crazy? Luo Yinming, who had been silent, suddenly spoke. The Golden Wing sect is tyrannical. Although they are also a first-class family, their inherited cultivation method is very domineering. In the sect, from the sect master to the disciples, their combat strength is extremely strong, so they have always been very arrogant. It's not surprising that they would do such a thing. People die for wealth, and birds die for food. The item that could make Lingxiao College send out so many elders and students was definitely not an ordinary item. It was obvious that it would arouse the jealousy of outsiders. Moreover, the other party seemed to be the joint forces of several sects, so they were naturally not afraid. As long as they finish the battle quickly and don't stay here for too long, it won't be a big problem. Zhuosheng looked at him strangely. Yinming, how do you know so much? Luo Yinming was silent for a moment. Master said a few more words before he left. Elder Huafeng had a carefree personality. After hearing the news, he was very shocked and didn't bother to hide it. As he spoke, Luo Yinming and the others beside him heard most of it. The few of them. Chu Liyue recalled the situation just now and mourned for the 9th grade pill that he should have successfully refined. Elder Huafeng is sometimes in a hurry. Dong. A low and melodious sound of a bell rang out. It came from the Donghuang Bell Tower. The square quickly quietened down, and everyone looked up. Elder Bo Yin stood upstairs with one hand behind his back. His hair was white, and his expression was calm. There's a small accident outside the school, but it will be resolved soon. Everyone, go back first and cultivate in peace. A deep and powerful voice spread out majestically. It was gentle and clear in everyone's ears, making them unconsciously calm down. Originally, some of the students were still worried and uneasy, but after hearing Elder Bo Yan's words, they gradually calmed down. Actually, thinking about it carefully, this was Lingxiao College's territory after all. Could they really let outsiders come and behave atrociously? The elders had seen all kinds of storms and waves, so it was naturally not a problem for them to deal with these problems. However, at this moment, a woman's voice suddenly sounded from the crowd. Elder Bo Yin, as a member of the school, the safety of the school is closely related to us. Therefore, Ziyuan requests to go out and fight. In the quiet square, this voice was particularly abrupt, and everyone heard it clearly. Countless pairs of eyes looked towards the source of the voice. It was the person standing behind the crowd, Jiang Jiwan. At that moment, Liang Xiaoxiao and the others were standing behind her. However, the words that came out of her mouth still attracted everyone's attention. Elder Bo Yin smiled. I've already said that there's only a small problem. The school has already sent out a few elders to deal with it. You can just stay in the school without worry. Jiang Jiwan pursed her lips, and her face was full of worry. But Senior Rongxiu. Chu Liyue raised her eyebrows. She, the official princess consort, had yet to speak, but Jiang Jiwan was so proactive. She really didn't know whether to praise her for her perseverance, or for her stubbornness. Jiang Jiwan's behavior might be seen as infatuation in some people's eyes, but in Elder Bo Yan's eyes, It was a little immature. His expression was a little cold, and he asked indifferently, "Are you doubting Rongxiu's ability, or doubting the abilities of the elders in the school?" Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1190. His words woke her up from her daze. Jiang Jiwan originally wanted to fight for a chance to go out, even if it was just to show her face in front of Rongxiu, to let him know that she was willing to sacrifice everything for him. But now that Elder Bo Yin had spoken, she suddenly realized how stupid she was to say such words in front of everyone. I didn't mean that. She was a little flustered and hurriedly explained. "I'm just worried about Senior Rongxiu. Rongxiu's talent and ability is the best in Lingxiao College, and now he is the holy son of Yuntian Tower. Don't tell me that his ability to protect himself is not as good as yours, and you need to worry about him?" Elder Bo Yan's tone was calm, but his words made Jiang Jiwan even more embarrassed. The square was silent. Everyone's gaze towards Jiang Jiwan also became complicated. That's right. Elder Bo Yan's words were not without reason. The situation outside was indeed dangerous, but many of the elders in the Lingxiao College had already been mobilized, and they could not allow those people to behave atrociously in the Lingxiao College. Furthermore, Rongxiu himself was the first on the green cloud roll of honor, and she was only a demigod. What was the use of worrying here? Even if she went, she would only be adding to the trouble and become a burden to everyone. Since that was the case, then her words were exceptionally puffed. Someone wants to put on a show of being infatuated in front of everyone, but she has to see if she has the qualifications and ability. Someone from the crowd sneered. Jiang Jiwan's face instantly turned red and white. She quickly raised her head to look, trying to identify who said that. But there were many people in the square, and the voice was unfamiliar, so she could not recognize who said that. She bit her lips tightly, her face full of grievance. In the past, when she showed such an expression, she would receive a lot of love and sympathy. But this time, it did not seem to be of any use. When the Lingxiao College was in trouble, everyone's first thought was the Lingxiao College, and not her. Jiang Jiwan's actions were obviously for her own benefit, so everyone did not think much of it, and even felt disgusted. Exactly. Elder Bo Yin had already told everyone to go back and wait patiently, but she insisted on going. What could she do there? Was he sending himself to death? Haha. I think she thinks too highly of herself, doesn't she? She was worried about senior brother Rongxiu. What was her status? Actually, I'm also very worried about senior Rongxiu. However, I know what I'm capable of. I won't cause trouble for senior brother and the elders at this time. The mocking words were like steel needles piercing into Jiang Jiwan's heart, tearing her self-esteem and face to shreds. He threw them on the ground and trampled on them. She had always been favored by the heavens. No matter where she was always the most pampered and proud existence among the crowd. But now those people looked at her, as if they were looking at a joke. Jiang Jiwan's limbs felt weak. She couldn't understand. She had only said a few words, and didn't do anything wrong. Why did it suddenly become like this? Elder Bo Yin looked at her pale face, and her dispirited look, and shook his head. I heard from your master that you're about to break through. Cultivate well in this period of time. These words gave Jiang Jiwan a way out. She bit her lips and forced herself to reply, then quickly turned and left. That proud head that was always held high finally drooped down at this moment, and the figure of his back revealed a bit of panic and embarrassment. Liang Xiaoxiao and the others exchanged glances with each other. Their faces were filled with awkwardness, and they quickly left together. After this brief interlude, many people in the square felt a little more relaxed. Seeing Elder Bo Yan's meaning, there shouldn't be any problems. Hence, under Elder Bo Yan's urging, the gathered students quickly dispersed. Let's go back first. Zhuosheng moved his arms. Sure. I didn't quite understand what Master taught me just now. Why don't you spar with me later and help me sort it out? Although his current realm was slightly higher than Luo Shishir's, in reality, Luo Shishir's talent as a martial artist was more outstanding than his. Zhuosheng already knew this, so he often patiently asked Luo Shishir for advice. Luo Shishir nodded. Luo Yinming thought for a while and said, "Then I'll go back and comprehend the Xian formation first." Although they had just arrived at the academy, they also felt the great pressure of competition here. So even if they were talented and had a good foundation, they didn't dare to relax at all. "Chu Yu, what about you?" The few of them looked at Chu Luiyue. She smiled. "Since you're all going back, I'll naturally go back too." The group of people dispersed. Chu Luiyue walked a distance towards the celestial physician, but in the end, she didn't go up the mountain. At this time, the sky was getting dark, and the sun was setting in the west. She chose an extremely secluded spot. After confirming that there was no one around, she raised her wrist. On her snow-white wrist, a peach blossom quietly bloomed. With a thought, her figure quickly disappeared from the spot. Relying on teleportation, Chu Luiyue silently arrived at the edge of the academy's barrier. Probably because the academy's elders had increased their vigilance, the barrier was faintly glowing, and it was full of pressure. She held her breath and stared at the barrier. Many thoughts flashed through her mind. Elder Bo Yin was right. Fong State City was just outside the academy, and no one dared to behave atrociously here. The elders had already moved together, and it shouldn't be a problem to deal with those people. Moreover, Rong Xiu was indeed powerful. Chu Luiyue had known Rong Xiu for so long, but until now, she still wasn't sure what realm Rong Xiu had reached. Logically speaking, there shouldn't be any problems. Chu Luiyue pursed her lips, and her heart was in a fierce struggle. If she went, she might become a useless burden like Jiang Jiwan. If that was the case, she might as well wait here peacefully. Moreover, the academy's barrier was heavily guarded. It was almost impossible for her to sneak out without attracting anyone's attention. After thinking about it, Chu Luiyue turned around and prepared to go back. However, just as she moved, a wave suddenly came from her dantian. The wave didn't come from the water droplet, but from the Black Pyramid. An extremely faint golden light seeped out from the three cracks. At this moment, for some reason, the black seal actually showed signs of loosening. This was Chu Luiyue's eyes narrowed. Just as she was thinking about what this meant, a silver light suddenly flashed in front of her. She focused her eyes and saw that the dagger that Rong Xiu gave her suddenly flew out by itself. Buzz! The dagger vibrated. The sharp edge of the blade shone with a cold light. Murderous aura overflowed. Chu Luiyue's heart suddenly jumped. Rong Xiu! Danger! Without thinking, she immediately turned around and ran toward the barrier. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1191. Chu Luiyue grabbed the dagger and held it tightly in her palm. As such, she could feel the violent tremors even more clearly. Chu Luiyue's heart also seemed to be beating faster, as if it was going to jump out of her chest. She quickened her pace, and soon felt the pressure from the barrier. The closer she got, the heavier it felt. She was at the foot of a mountain. There were a few huge rocks piled up beside her, and she quickly hid behind them. Because the sky had darkened and this place was desolate to begin with, not many people came and went, so no one noticed her. However, Chu Luiyue did not dare to relax. She thought that she knew that the difficulty she had to overcome was not this, but the huge barrier in front of her. What method did he have to use to open the barrier without making a sound? Chu Luiyue frowned. Suddenly, a white light flashed in her mind. That's it. Previously, when she first entered the academy and stood outside the barrier, some vague memory fragments flashed through her mind. She did not know who set up a small Xian formation and connected it to the barrier. Then, like a key, it easily opened the barrier. If she could also construct that Xian formation, then this thought made Chu Luiyue restless. She closed her eyes and began to frantically search through that memory fragment. If she remembered correctly, that Xian formation did not seem to be particularly difficult. With her current strength, she might be able to succeed if she put in some effort. However, at that time, the scene had only flashed past her eyes. She hadn't even realized anything before the scene had completely disappeared. Therefore, she only had a vague impression. She did not remember what that Xian formation looked like. And now, what she needed to do was to recall the Xian formation in its entirety, and in its entirety. This was easy to say, but when it came to doing it, it was full of difficulties. Her memory was mostly missing, so even she did not know when that memory belonged to, and did not know what happened before and after that. This made it even more difficult for her to recall. She wanted to pick up that vague memory fragment now, but it was like looking for a needle in a haystack. Her surroundings were quiet, and a gentle breeze blew past, blowing the hair on her forehead. She could clearly hear the sound of her heart beating. Countless images flashed through his mind. At this moment, time became extremely difficult to endure. Finally, she recalled the fragment, and began to search for the details in her mind. In the blurry image, there was still a pair of fair and slender hands. That pair of hands lightly waved in the air, and several streams of light danced, quickly forming a profound formation. In Chu Liyue's eyes, that small Xian formation was actually just a blurry ball of light. She did not give up and patiently watched. The same scene continued to play out, again and again, over and over again. She even stared at every movement of his hands, not missing a single detail. Finally, the general outline of the profound formation was gradually revealed. She was overjoyed. Originally, she didn't have much hope, but she didn't expect this move to actually work. And it was much faster than she had expected. Gradually, the position of every line on the profound formation was gradually drawn out clearly. This process was actually very strange. It was as if a layer of mist had covered the glass, and nothing could be seen clearly. But when she wiped away the mist bit by bit, everything started to become clear. Everything happened naturally, as if she already knew what the Xian formation was like. Just as this thought surfaced, Chu Liyue's heart suddenly jumped. She almost subconsciously frowned and denied this guess. The reason why she could do it so smoothly was probably because she was a level 9 Xian master in the past, and her comprehension of profound formations had always been very strong. It was normal for her to occasionally master it. Chu Liyue didn't pay too much attention to this matter, and quickly focused all her attention on the profound formation. After a period of time, the last stroke was finally seen clearly. She suddenly opened her eyes. She gently raised her hand and slowly drew in the air. Several streams of light flew out and intertwined in front of her, dazzling and moving. Chu Liyue followed what she had learned before, and followed those steps very strictly bit by bit. Soon, a rough outline of the profound formation appeared in front of her. But because it was her first time, she wasn't very familiar with many parts, and Chu Liyue's current Xian master rank had yet to recover to level 9. So even though this profound formation was barely outlined, it was still a little rough. But Chu Liyue was already very satisfied with this. She held her breath and focused, staring at the profound formation, and filled in the remaining lines one by one. As the profound formation continued to be perfected, the pressure and aura on it also gradually increased. When she solemnly and carefully drew the last stream of light, and completed the profound formation, she didn't even dare to breathe loudly. She tried her best to suppress the excitement in her heart, and looked up to the front. The Academy's barrier was only 10 steps away from her. She gently raised her wrist, and sent the small profound formation out. At first glance, it looked like a butterfly that was about to take flight, lightly flying over there. It danced lightly in the air. Chu Liyue held her breath. Thump! Thump! Her heart seemed to be tightly clenched by something. It was beating intensely, and the sound was incomparably clear. This short distance actually seemed to be exceptionally long at this moment. Finally, the profound formation flew to the front of the barrier. It was like a thin piece of paper that was gently attached to the barrier. This was the moment. Chu Liyue suddenly felt that there seemed to be some kind of subtle connection between herself and the barrier. This feeling was not unfamiliar. She pursed her lips and walked forward, landing soundlessly. As she approached, the pressure and power on her body also became more and more terrifying. When she stood in front of it, even her bones faintly hurt. But Chu Liyue didn't have the heart to care about this at this moment. She stretched out her hand according to the image in her mind, Crack. An extremely soft sound was heard. The huge barrier slowly split open from the middle. This movement was extremely small, and even the barrier beside it wasn't affected at all. It was still as calm as before. Chu Luiyue raised her leg and stepped out. Boom! Chu Luiyue had just walked out of the barrier when she heard a loud sound coming from afar. She suddenly raised her head, and her expression was immediately shocked as her pupils shrank. In the sky far away, hundreds of people were fighting. The sound just now came from there. Forces of various colors flew and collided wildly. It was extremely chaotic. But Chu Luiyue still saw Rongxiu at a glance. At this moment, he seemed to be surrounded and attacked by a group of people. His snow-white brocade robe was already stained with several messy bloodstains. And those people had no intention of letting him go. A sharp arrow suddenly pierced through the air. It went straight for Rongxiu's back. The peach blossom on Chu Luiyue's wrist bloomed enchantingly. The force around her surged wildly. In the next moment, her figure suddenly disappeared. Chapter 1192. Rongxiu felt the cold wind coming from behind him. His eyes turned sharp and golden light surged in his palm. Suddenly, he paused and a rare look of surprise flashed across his face. In that moment of hesitation, the sharp arrow had arrived behind him and was about to pierce through his body. Rongxiu, Elder Xufeng, and the others were shocked when they saw this scene from afar. Their eyes widened, and their faces were filled with shock as they cried out in a deep voice. "Get out of the way! How could Rongxiu be distracted at a time like this?" Jin Lei sneered. The corners of his mouth curled up, and his eyes were full of mockery. He was almost sure that he would win. Rongxiu was very good at fighting. Previously, they had besieged him, but they did not gain any advantage over him. But so what? At this critical moment, there was no room for absent-mindedness or hesitation. The slightest mistake could lead to extremely serious consequences. However, just when he thought that he could wait for Rongxiu to be injured and defeated, a slender figure suddenly appeared behind Rongxiu. That person appeared so suddenly that he did not even cause any energy fluctuation. He was already there. Teleportation. When Jin Lei and the others saw this scene, they all had the same thought in their minds. Those who could teleport were at least great deities. However, they had already surrounded Rongxiu. The elders outside had tried several times but failed to break in. How could this person clang? A crisp and powerful sound of collision was heard. That person was holding a black sword and had blocked the sharp arrow. Swish! That person raised his wrist slightly, and the sharp arrow was deflected. It brushed against the black sword. The sound was ear-piercing. But soon after, that person's black sword quickly slashed down, directly cutting the arrow in half. Crack! Everything happened in an instant. Who is that? Jin Lei and the others tensed up and looked over. However, when they saw that person's face, they were all stunned. That was a young man? It was indeed a young man. He wore a light green brocade robe, and his figure was slender and tall. His appearance was delicate and pretty, and there was a hint of youthfulness on his face. He definitely didn't look more than 20 years old. That was a child who didn't seem to be on the same level as them. But at this moment, with the black sword in his hand, he suddenly and swiftly broke through their blockade and appeared behind Rongxiu, blocking the arrow for him. Almost instantly, everyone understood. He had used some kind of yuan tool that could teleport. There was a moment of silence in the chaotic scene. Chu Luiyue held her sword with both hands. That arrow almost made her hand go numb. If she hadn't been cultivating with Dabao all this time, and greatly improved her physical strength, she definitely wouldn't have been able to block that move. She could feel countless pairs of incomparably sharp eyes around her, which were like blades scraping her body. "Who are you?" Jin Lei shouted in a deep voice. He subconsciously wanted to see what realm this person was in, but he was surprised to find that the other party had concealed his aura extremely well. Even he couldn't pry into the young man's true strength. However, to be able to block that arrow, he seemed to be at least a rank 9 martial artist. Facing such a young face, it was really impossible to associate him with a god-level expert. Chu Luyue turned a deaf ear to his words, and only turned her head to look at Rong Xiao. Their gazes met. The surprise and astonishment in Rong Xiao's eyes had all dissipated, leaving only a heavy and indiscernible darkness. Between the ripples, there seemed to be an undercurrent surging. Just this one glance was enough. Chu Luyue heaved a sigh of relief. His complexion and aura looked good, so he shouldn't be too seriously injured. And he seemed to be quite at ease. Her gaze quickly swept past the messy bloodstains on his clothes. Most of them shouldn't belong to him. This made her heart finally calm down, but at the same time, a thought flashed through her mind. Rong Xiao's strength was indeed stronger than she had expected. This man, Chu Yu? Just as the people here fell into a strange silence, the few elders in the distance finally saw Chu Liyue's face clearly and couldn't help but be shocked. Elder Wanzheng was the most shocked. His face, which had always remained calm even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him, was now filled with shock. After the shock, it was anger. Why are you here? Didn't this kid say that he was going back? Why did he suddenly appear here? And he directly rushed to the center of the group of people who were besieging him. Did he think that he had lived too long? Chu Luyue wanted to explain, but the surrounding people were staring at her covetously, so she didn't have the chance to speak. Chu Yu? Jean Lei's dark eyes swept across Chu Luyue and sneered. Looks like you're also a student of Lingxiao College? He quickly ran through his mind. Among the first-rate families in the Divine Ruins world, there was no one with the surname Chu. This made him even more unscrupulous, and he didn't take Chu Luyue seriously at all. Today, he had even offended the Yuntian Tower and so on. Why would he be afraid of such a small thing? You're quite bold at such a young age. Chu Luyue gripped the long yuan sword in her hand tightly, but her expression didn't seem to be nervous. Hearing this, she even laughed. Everyone praises me like that. Jean Lei's eyelids twitched violently, and his expression quickly turned cold. Looks like the elders of your college really don't know how to teach people. Didn't anyone tell you that there are some people you can't afford to offend? Chu Luyue blinked, then looked at Rong Xiao and asked with incomparable sincerity. Senior brother Rong Xiao, are they all people I can't afford to offend? When she said senior brother Rong Xiao, her voice was clear and gentle, and she slightly dragged the last syllable. Listening to it, it was like a feather gently tickling one's heart, making one's heart itch. Looking at her clever and cunning eyes, as well as the witty smile on her lips, Rong Xiao raised his sword-like eyebrows slightly, and his eyes darkened slightly. Her character really hadn't changed. If it weren't for the fact that there were still so many people here, he calmly suppressed the desire in his heart, and his thin lips curved into a perfect arc. Of course not. His voice was deep and magnetic, and every word seemed to be whispering softly beside one's ear, making one unconsciously sink into it. You can provoke me however you want. The conversation between the two of them was ambiguous, but to the others, it sounded a little ungrateful and even arrogant. Jean Lei laughed as if he had heard a joke. Ha! He raised the axe in his hand and pointed it directly at the two of them. Everyone, there's not much time left. A piercingly dangerous murderous intent suddenly erupted from his body. When the elders in the distance saw this scene, their hearts pounded violently. Elder Wanzheng anxiously prepared to step forward, but Rong Xiao suddenly glanced over. There was a hint of a smile on his incomparably noble face. Elders, don't worry. With me around, I will definitely protect her. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1193. Elder Wanzheng and the others were stunned. Jean Lei and the others had already made their move. Almost at the same time, the elders of the academy followed closely behind them. Quite a number of people were stopped. After all, there were many elders from the academy now. In terms of numbers, both sides were basically equal. However, there were still a few people who were faster. They surrounded Rong Xiao and Chu Luyue. Rong Xiao suddenly took a step forward and patted Chu Luyue's shoulder lightly. Just stay here. Leave the rest to me. Chu Luyue felt her shoulders sink. Then, something slid down her shoulder quietly. She opened her hand, and quickly put that thing into her universe ring. She looked up at Rong Xiao. The two of them looked at each other and understood each other's intentions. She nodded without batting an eyelid. "Senior brother, be careful." Rong Xiao raised his hand and quickly set up a golden barrier around Chu Luiyue. Then he moved and stood in front of Chu Luiyue. "I'm your opponent." He raised his chin slightly. His expression was calm, but there was a noble arrogance in his bones. "Come at me together." Rong Xiao's words completely infuriated the few of them. Arrogant. In recent years, Rong Xiao was indeed famous as the holy son of the Yuntian Tower. It was rumored that his birth mother secretly married someone from outside the world of God and gave birth to him. A few years after he was born, he was found by the people of the Yuntian Tower and found. At first, the Yuntian Tower planned to execute him directly. After all, this kind of thing was a great stain on the reputation of any first-rate family in the world of God. However, the Yuntian Tower kept him alive in the end. It was all because of his amazing talent. Later, not only did he survive in the Yuntian Tower, he even became the Holy Sun in one fell swoop. It was rumored that this person was cruel and ruthless. Otherwise, he wouldn't have gained so much power and control over the Yuntian Tower in just a few years while the Yuntian Tower's patriarch was in seclusion. Therefore, Jin Lei and the others did not underestimate Rong Xiao from the very beginning. But now, when they heard his words, they still felt that it was ridiculous. After the fight just now, they had a rough idea of Rong Xiao's strength. It was normal for him to be able to hold on for a while, but it was impossible for him to challenge so many of them at the same time. Jin Lei was the first to attack. The others were not willing to fall behind, afraid that the treasure would be snatched away by Jin Lei, so they followed closely behind. Rong Xiao hovered in the air and raised his arm. A ball of golden light quickly appeared in his palm. At the same time, his aura began to surge wildly. With him as the center, a shocking pressure frantically spread out in all directions. Jin Lei's heart skipped a beat, suddenly feeling a little uneasy. After the tough fight just now, Rong Xiao's strength should have weakened, but why did it seem like there was no change from before? At this moment, Rong Xiao looked up. Two clusters of golden flames flashed in the depths of his deep eyes. Jin Lei suddenly realized something, and a look of shock flashed across his face. "How did you refine a god?" Boom. He did not have time to finish his sentence. Rong Xiao waved his wrist lightly, and the ball of golden light quietly flew out. It was only the size of a fist, and it seemed to be wrapped in a layer of transparent glass. Inside, it was filled with a rich golden light. When it streaked across the air, it miraculously did not cause any energy waves. It looked very ordinary, and it slowly floated forward. But a look of horror flashed across Jin Lei's eyes, and he quickly retreated. This Rong Xiao, he had actually concealed his true strength before. He retreated in a panic, as if the small ball of golden light was something extremely terrifying. But he was fast, but the ball of golden light was faster. Moreover, he quickly realized that the space around him had become thick and heavy. Every move he made was extremely laborious. Why is his godly territory's suppression so strong? The people next to him finally realized that something was wrong, and they all exclaimed in shock. Jin Lei's throat tightened, and the blood in his body almost froze. His mind was in a mess. Rong Xiao was the Yuntian Tower's holy son. According to the rumors, the bloodline power in his body had already awakened, and he had already cultivated the Holy Sun's golden body. The so-called Holy Sun's golden body was also a special divine body. It was a secret technique unique to the Yuntian Tower's Holy Sun. Other cultivators might not be able to cultivate their own divine body, even if they became a high god. But the Yuntian Tower was different. Over the years, their Holy Sons had been able to activate their bloodline power and form a Holy Sun golden body at the same time. In other words, they had forged their own divine body. Because of this, the Yuntian Tower's Holy Sun's combat strength was usually extremely strong. But there were advantages and disadvantages to this. Once they cultivated the Holy Sun's golden body, they would not be able to cultivate a more powerful divine body. This was also a huge shackle for them. But just now, he clearly felt that Rong Xiao, clearly displayed a divine body suppression that was stronger than the Holy Son's golden body. He had two divine bodies, and the suppression of this godly territory was naturally double. No, it was stronger than double. As these crazy thoughts flashed through Jean Lei's mind, the golden ball of light had already flown 3 steps away from him. Rongxiu's expression was indifferent, and his eyes were disdainful. His thin lips curled slightly, and he spat out a word. The suppression was heavy, and it was like a divine judgment. Break! Digression. February. What do you think about your man having 2 godly territories? Rongxiu. Calm smile waiting for praise. Push someone's face away. That's not important. What's important is that from today onwards, the monthly votes will be doubled. What do you think? February. I've already set the date for October's explosive release. The more monthly votes you get, the more explosive it will be. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1194. Following his command, the golden ball of light suddenly exploded. In an instant, golden light flashed. It was as bright as day between heaven and earth. The brilliant light instantly enveloped the surroundings. A powerful god territory descended. Before the few of them could fight Rongxiu, they were already trapped in this god territory. They instinctively wanted to use their own god territories to fight back, but they quickly realized in horror that in this god territory shrouded in golden light, their strength was severely suppressed, and they could not use their own god territories. In fact, even moving had become extremely difficult. This was truly a situation where they were meat on someone's chopping board. If they could not think of a way to break free as soon as possible, they could only stay here and be attacked by Rongxiu at will. Jean Lei actually had no intention of fighting with Rongxiu again. Dual divine domains. Anyone who went up against him would only end up dead. However, even though he tried his best to retreat, it was already too late. This was because the distance between them and Rongxiu was very close to begin with, and he had charged at the front just now. It was too late for him to retreat now. Compared to the few of them who were stuck in a dilemma, Rongxiu, who was in the middle, seemed to be exceptionally relaxed. His gaze darkened, and the space in front of him began to collapse inch by inch. It looked like it was about to reach where those few people were. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that if he wanted to, he could directly take their lives now. Not only were Jean Lei and the others shocked, but the people who were fighting in the distance also noticed the commotion and looked over. It was fine if they did not look, but once they did, everyone's faces were filled with disbelief. In fact, even Elder Xu Feng and the others did not know how powerful Rongxiu was now. Hence, when they saw this scene, the shock in their hearts was no less than Jean Lei and the others. Wasn't Rongxiu fighting with them just now? How did he suddenly become so strong now? An elder could not help but murmur softly. Elder Xu Feng suppressed the surging waves in his heart. Isn't that obvious? It's obvious that he was hiding his strength. Although they did not know why Rongxiu had suddenly changed his mind and used his true strength, it was still a good thing for them. This round was a sure win. I admit defeat. When the space collapsed in front of him, Jean Lei finally gave up without hesitation. His face was tense, and the veins on his forehead were bulging. From this, it could be seen that although these words were spoken quickly, they were not done willingly. He wanted that treasure. After all, a king-grade origin tool was extremely rare in the Divine Ruins world. Even a first-rate family would crazily chase after it. But before that, he had to be alive. If he really died here today, then it would be like drawing water with a bamboo basket. In the end, it would all benefit others. Jean Lei had seen many big scenes. Although his temper was irritable and arrogant, he could still bend and stand tall at crucial moments. Rongxiu, as long as you stop now and let us go, I promise that the Golden Wings sect will never oppose the Yuntian Tower again. Jean Lei saw that the space in front of him was not slowing down, but the pressure on him was getting heavier. He could not help but swallow with difficulty and raise his voice again. I mean what I say. Rongxiu smiled. Oh, really? Of course. I'm the sect master's direct disciple. In front of so many people, I will definitely do as I say. As Jinlei spoke, he could already feel the pressure pressing down on him, causing his face to ache faintly. It was as if a sharp knife was constantly scraping his face. Rongxiu's eyebrows twitched slightly, and he seemed to be smiling. You should have said this earlier. Do you think you still have the right to bargain with me now? Jinlei's face paled. He could see the killing intent in Rongxiu's eyes. Rongxiu really dared to kill him. Jinlei was finally completely flustered. Aye, Rongxiu, I just want to snatch that treasure. I never had the intention to kill you. If you kill me here today, the Golden Wing sect will not let this matter rest. You want to use the Golden Wing sect to pressure me? Rongxiu's tone was languid, and his expression was indifferent. If the sect master of the Golden Wing sect was here, I could still give him face. You. Who are you? His voice was calm, but it carried the most powerful killing intent. Jinlei choked. Only then did he remember that although he was highly regarded by the sect master, he was not the person in charge of the Golden Wing sect. On the other hand, Rongxiu, as the holy son of the Yuntian Tower, was on equal footing with their sect master. Rongxiu seemed to feel that these words were not enough of a blow to Jinlei. Besides, even if I'm willing to let you go, the academy will still be in charge. The academy may not be so. Causing trouble in Fangzhou City was the same as causing trouble in Lingxiao College's territory. He originally wanted to end the battle quickly and snatch the treasure back. The sect master would definitely protect him for the sake of the treasure. But now, not only did he not get the treasure, he was also in a quagmire. His life and death were in the hands of the other party. You did it on purpose just now? He suddenly realized something and blurted it out. Rongxiu had been besieged previously, but there were wins and losses, so the two sides were actually in a state of tug-of-war. They also thought that as long as they continued fighting, they would be able to snatch the treasure back from Rongxiu. But now that they thought about it, Rongxiu was just stalling for time. He gave them hope, thinking that the treasure was within their reach. In reality, he was just exhausting their strength and patience, waiting for the elders of Lingxiao College to arrive. Now he had turned the tables and gained the upper hand. Even if they wanted to leave, it would be difficult for them to escape the siege of so many elders. In an instant, Jinlei's heart was filled with endless regret. It was all in the heat of the moment. If he had known, he would not have followed them. Rongxiu smiled slightly, admitting it. You're easier to bait than expected. It must have been hard on the sect master of the Golden Wing sect to nurture you for so many years and entrust you with such an important task. In the end, he was just a brainless person. Jinlei clenched his fists tightly, and countless thoughts flashed through his mind. His face gradually turned pale, and soon, he was covered in cold sweat. It's all his fault for encouraging us. Suddenly, a sharp reprimand came from the side. We wanted to compete fairly with you, but he urged us to join forces. He also urged us to chase after you. That's right. It's him. It's all the Golden Wing sect's fault. It has nothing to do with us. Rongxiu, elders, every injustice has its perpetrator, and every debt has its debtor. This debt should be on Jinlei's head. In an instant, the other families turned against him, and the situation was reversed. Jinlei was trembling with anger, and then he laughed bitterly. Good. Since all of you have said so then, I don't have to be polite with you. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly shouted in a low voice. The next moment, he actually forcibly broke free from Rongxiu's god realm. In an instant, his skin and flesh ruptured. Blood dripped everywhere. He went straight for Chu Luiyue on the other side. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1195. Jinlei's outburst was extremely sudden. No one expected him to suddenly turn around and charge towards Chu Luiyue, while he was still begging for mercy. Moreover, he did it in such a decisive manner. Chu Luiyue realized what he was going to do the moment he charged towards her. She moved her feet and quickly dodged backwards, probably because she was surrounded by Rong Xiu's enchantment. Although she was also in the divine realm, she was not affected at all and could still move freely. This also gave her a chance to shake off Jin Lei. However, Jin Lei was already a little crazy at this moment. He was on the verge of breaking down. When those people turned against him and pushed all the blame onto him, he knew that he was finished. The matter had already blown up. Lingxiao College needed an explanation. These clans and sects needed to shirk their responsibilities. Even the sect leader of the Golden Wing sect would not be willing to go against the school and Yuntian Tower for him, who had not taken back anything. He knew that he would become a sacrifice for the balance of everything. The situation was set. He had no other choice. Therefore, in his madness, the only way he could think of to protect himself was to kidnap a student from Lingxiao College. It did not matter who the student was or what her identity was. The important thing was that Lingxiao College would definitely not give up on their student in front of so many people. They would definitely give in. These thoughts flashed through Jin Lei's mind in an instant. Therefore, he did not hesitate to make a move. Even if he forcefully broke free from Rong Xiu's divine realm and was heavily injured. But at this moment, he was about to lose his life. Why would he care about that? Black-bone leopard. He quickly closed in on Chu Luiyue as he shouted. He summoned his own contracted magical beast. To be more precise, it was a contracted magical beast. A vigorous black figure appeared in response to the call. It was a bun that was completely black. Only its eyes were dark green, like ghost fire. It made one's heart turn cold, just by looking at it. Its speed was even faster than Jin Lei. In the blink of an eye, it was already behind Chu Luiyue. One man and one beast prepared to launch a pincer attack on Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue's eyes turned cold. Dumpling. Whoosh. The sound of wings flapping could be heard. A crimson-tailed red phoenix that was crimson all over appeared in everyone's line of sight. It flapped its wings and the flames on its body raged. Everywhere it passed, everything was burned to ashes. Seeing Dumpling, the black-bone leopard hesitated for a moment, and a trace of panic flashed across its eyes. In the Divine Ruins world, there were quite a few types of divine beasts. But even if they were all divine beasts, there were still differences in strength. Among the divine beasts, there were two primordial divine beasts, the Great Void Phoenix Dragon and the Crimson Gold Heavenly Phoenix. Behind them were the divine beast clans that possessed the power of their bloodlines. Correspondingly, the stronger the bloodline power, the higher the status. Although the black bone leopard was also a divine beast, compared to Dumpling, who possessed the bloodline of the primordial divine beasts, it was still lacking. The reverence for the two primordial divine beasts' bloodlines that were buried deep in its bones and blood made the black bone leopard fearful, and it even faintly wanted to submit. With just this moment of hesitation, Dumpling had already taken the lead to attack. Boom! A ball of red fire flew out. It went straight for the black bone leopard. The black bone leopard hurriedly dodged, but a part of its tail was still burned. Dumpling directly swooped down. Its sharp claws clawed at the black bone leopard's eyes. The two divine beasts quickly engaged in a battle. Jin Lei's expression froze for a moment. He did not expect that such a young and tender youth would actually contract with such a level of divine beast. This Chuyu might not be so easy to deal with. But at this moment, Jin Lei already had no other choice. So he did not stop his footsteps and continued to rush towards Chu Luiyue. At the same time, he used all his strength to withstand the terrifying pressure of the Rong Xiu, and forcefully raised his axe. Fiercely chopped down. Crack. A small crack appeared on the golden barrier. Chu Luiyue's eyebrows twitched. She quickly retreated while circulating the force in her body. Bang! The barrier shattered. At this moment, the distance between the two of them was extremely close. Jin Lei raised the axe in his hand again and chopped down. The void shook. A tyrannical wave crazily attacked. The Rong Xiu's expression turned fierce, and murderous intent surged in his eyes. However, at this moment, a burst of intense light suddenly erupted from Chu Luiyue's hand. A ball of light shot up into the sky. It's that Emperor Divine Weapon. Suddenly, a cry of surprise came from the crowd. Chu Liyue's heart trembled. Emperor Divine Weapon? So this was what they wanted to snatch. Immediately after, Chu Liyue saw that wherever the ball of light passed, a faint glow would scatter. The Rongxiu's golden divine territory actually quietly dissipated. After seeing this clearly, Chu Liyue's heart tightened, and she suddenly felt that something was wrong. The aura of an Emperor Divine Weapon was actually stronger than the Rongxiu's divine territory. She looked up. The light on the ball of light was gradually becoming gentler. From here, she could vaguely see that there was something inside. Moreover, as the light flashed on the ball of light, the outline inside became clearer and clearer. More importantly, the aura on the ball of light was also crazily increasing. Jean Lei's axe had just chopped down when the sharp aura was swept away by the invisible wave of the ball of light, and disappeared without a sound. Chu Liyue sucked in a cold breath. This thing. That's not an Emperor Divine Weapon. Elder Xu Feng suddenly exclaimed in shock. That's a venerable divine weapon. The moment he said that, everyone was shocked. Everyone, including the many elders of Lingxiao College, firmly believed that the treasure that appeared from Blue Feather's abyss was an Emperor Divine Weapon. According to the records of the college, the equipment refiner back then was indeed a king equipment refiner. No one would have thought that the last thing he left behind was a legendary venerable divine weapon. No wonder he died not long after he finished refining it. It was obvious that he had exhausted all his energy and effort for this thing. In the dead silence, Jean Lei was the first to react. The situation of being on the verge of death had stimulated all his potential. He didn't even think about it before he charged upwards. Now the closest to the venerable divine weapon was Chu Yu, and the second was him. As long as he could surpass that ignorant brat and take the venerable divine weapon for himself, he would definitely be able to turn the situation around. When he thought of this, his eyes became even crazier. He chased after him with all his might. The moment Jean Lei moved, Chu Liyue moved as well. Rongxiu did not pass the item to her for her to lose it. If it really fell into the hands of others, she would not be able to bear the blame. However, she quickly discovered a problem. Under the terrifying power of that treasure, she could not teleport. Because of this, her speed was slower than Jean Lei's. In the blink of an eye, Jean Lei had already caught up. The two of them were very close. Jean Lei directly threw the axe in his hand. It chopped toward Chu Liyue. You want to snatch it from me? Dream on. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1196. At this moment, Chu Liyue and Jean Lei were the closest to the venerable divine weapon. Who would be able to obtain it had become the focus of everyone's attention. When they saw Jean Lei directly throw his axe at Chu Liyue, the faces of the elders on the academy's side changed. Chu Yu, Elder Wanzheng's heart sunk. That kid was only at the middle stage of rank 7. How could he be Jean Lei's match? If he was hit by this attack, he was afraid that the hearts of Elder Wenxi and the others were also hanging high in the air. At this moment, no one could make a move. Everything depended on Chu Yu. When Chu Liyue saw Jean Lei, she knew that he was a god-level expert. He was a god-level expert who had stepped into the god-level realm. His level was much higher than hers. Even she knew that if she were to face such a person head-on, she would only have death waiting for her. However, they were so close to each other, and no one could help her. She had to take this attack on her own. Looking at the ice-cold axe that was flying toward her rapidly, Chu Liyue did not hesitate at all, and used her strongest combat ability. In an instant, a layer of golden armor covered her body. At the same time, a black shield stood in front of her. Jean Lei didn't think much of it, and couldn't help but laugh. My axe is a high-level divine weapon, and it's extremely sharp. Do you think you can just take out a shabby shield and... Clang! The two collided. He didn't manage to finish his sentence. His smug expression quickly turned into astonishment and disbelief, because his axe was actually unable to split open the black shield. Instead, it was bounced back by the intense collision. Swoosh! He quickly dodged. The axe brushed past his face. He had actually cut off half of his ear. In an instant he felt excruciating pain. His face was covered in blood. Coupled with his already pale face, he looked even more battered and exhausted. That was not all. A strong gust of wind swept past him, and at the same time, it slowed down his speed. The distance between him and Chu Luiyue widened again. You! Jinlei looked at Chu Luiyue in shock and anger. He covered his ear with one hand and couldn't believe what had just happened. A young man who wasn't even 20 years old withstood his attack, and even gained the upper hand. One had to know that in order to ensure that his attack would hit the target, he had used all of his strength. It was a great humiliation. What a joke! Then, the young man's face appeared from behind the black shield. His delicate and clean face was pale, and blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. He wasn't completely unaffected by the collision just now. However, in the end he was still in one piece. Jinlei couldn't describe how he felt. He looked at the black shield in Chu Luiyue's hand. There was something wrong with that thing. Ever since he got the axe, he had been invincible. Invincible. No matter how tough something was, no matter how solid the barrier was, he could easily split it open with his axe. Isn't the barrier that Rongxiu set up like this? However, such a sharp axe was completely useless in front of the black shield. Jinlei took a closer look and realized that there wasn't even a mark on it. This was definitely not an ordinary yuan instrument. Chu Luiyue sensed the madness in his eyes and immediately became alert. All the muscles in her body tensed up. Her opponent's power was much higher than hers. She almost couldn't take that blow. If she were to do it 2 more times, her arm would probably be crippled first. She made a prompt decision and continued to charge towards the thing above her. Dumpling! She let out a clear shout. A red figure quickly approached her. It was Dumpling, who had just finished off the black bone leopard. There were still a few pieces of flesh on its claws. It had been left behind when it had scratched the black bone leopard's face. Chu Luiyue leaped and jumped onto Dumpling's back. Whoosh! Dumpling flapped its wings, and its speed suddenly increased. Jinlei instinctively turned back to take a look. His contracted divine beast, the black bone leopard, was now beyond recognition. Its face and body were badly mutilated, and there were several red flames burning on its body. It was rolling around in pain, trying to extinguish the flames. However, how could the flames of the red-tailed phoenix be extinguished so easily? As if sensing Jinlei's gaze, the black bone leopard raised its head and looked over. All the coldness and ruthlessness in its eyes had disappeared. Instead, it was full of desire and hope. Now the only one who could help it was its master. However, Jinlei forcibly retracted his gaze and chased after Chu Luiyue. At this time, he was already a clay bodhisattva crossing the river. He couldn't even protect himself, so how could he care about anything else? The black bone leopard was already crippled and couldn't help him. He could only give it up. Seeing Jinlei's action, the black bone leopard's only intact eye moved, leaving only mournful despair. It howled. However, Jinlei turned a deaf ear to it. He mobilized all his strength, hoping to snatch that venerable origin device before Chu Luiyue. However, imagination was beautiful, but reality was cruel. He soon realized that after the previous battle, he had used up more than half of his strength. He couldn't catch up to the red-tailed phoenix at all. The distance between the two sides was increasing. This made Jinlei more and more anxious. If he was unable to seize this final opportunity, then he would probably have to stay here forever. After thinking about it, he gritted his teeth and made a bold decision. Since it was a dead end anyway, he might as well take a risk. Even if he really died, he could drag someone down with him. At this thought, a strange pattern suddenly appeared between his brows. That was the golden wing sex totem. When the totem appeared, the origin power around his body began to boil. It began to rise at an abnormal speed. One of the elders suddenly exclaimed in surprise. Oh no, he's burning his bloodline power. Of course, the disciples of the Golden Wing sect also had bloodline power. However, their bloodline power was different from that of ordinary aristocratic families. Most of them obtained the corresponding bloodline power through cultivation or other methods. And this was also an important condition for them to settle down in the sect. The stronger the bloodline power, the higher their status, and the greater their right to speak in the sect. At this moment, he activated the totem and burned the bloodline power he had accumulated with great difficulty. It was obvious that he was planning to fight to the death. Chuyu was in danger. However, as soon as he said that, everyone saw that Rongxiu had already moved. He took a step forward with his long legs and quickly approached Jin Lei. His face was expressionless, as if covered with a layer of frost cold to the bone. There was no doubt that he had already made up his mind to kill Jin Lei. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1197. Sensing the cold murderous intent behind him, Jin Lei turned around instinctively. After glancing at Rongxiu, he couldn't help but shiver, and a deep sense of fear rose from the bottom of his heart. Why? Why did Rongxiu suddenly have such a strong murderous intent towards me? They had been fighting for so long, but Rongxiu's emotions were calm and indifferent. It was as if everything had nothing to do with him. Or perhaps he did not care about those things at all. Even when Rongxiu attacked with all his might and suppressed all of them, he did not react at all. But now, he had suddenly become like this. Jin Lei really could not understand. The pressing time and the crisis of life and death made him unable to think carefully about this matter. The only thing he could do was to rush toward Chu Luiyue at an even faster speed. Either he could snatch that venerable 1 yuan instrument, or he could kidnap Chuyu. Chu Luiyue flew upward with Dumpling. At this moment, the venerable 1 instrument had stopped and was quietly suspended in mid-air. It was still enveloped in a layer of faint light. From where Chu Luiyue was, she could barely see the outline of the object inside. It seemed like it was also a sword. The closer she got, the clearer she could feel the pressure coming from above. Chu Luiyue held her breath. The aura of this sword was several times stronger than the Dragon Abyss sword. The Dragon Abyss sword was personally forged by Taizu. It triggered 81 Tianlei, and was considered a high-level divine instrument. Even in the Divine Ruins world, the Dragon Abyss sword was definitely a valuable treasure. After Chu Luiyue came to the academy, she realized that although Taizu was unable to break through to the High God realm, and remained at the Demigod realm, he was extremely outstanding in the aspect of weapon forging. However, every time she asked about this, Taizu did not seem to be willing to talk about it. After a few times, Chu Luiyue did not ask anymore. The sword in front of her was a venerable 1 instrument. It was 2 whole levels higher than the Dragon Abyss sword. The degree of its tyranny was self-evident. Girl, this venerable artifact doesn't have an artifact soul. You can take it. Taizu's voice suddenly came from the bottom of his heart. Chu Luiyue was stunned. Artifact soul? That's something that only King Divine artifacts and above have. I'll explain it to you in detail in the future. All you need to do now is to snatch it. The Long Yuan sword was not bad, but compared to this, it was far inferior. Chu Luiyue pursed his lips when he heard Taizu being so excited. Taizu, please enlighten me. The Long Yuan sword has a sword spirit. Although it can't be compared to the sword spirit, with me around, I can lend a helping hand. You just have to find the right time to transfer the sword soul to that sword. Such an opportunity could be said to be extremely rare. However, Chu Luiyue suddenly hesitated. But, Taizu, this venerable 1 instrument belongs to the academy. It doesn't seem appropriate for me to take it for myself. According to what they had said, the academy had sent out many people, and spent a lot of manpower and resources, in order to retrieve this item. If she were to do that now, she would feel a little apologetic. Originally, this matter had nothing to do with her. She had only come here because she was worried about Rongxiu. During the crisis just now, Rongxiu had handed this item to her without hesitation, so that she could take good care of it. But if she took the opportunity in the end to take it for herself, Taizu was stunned for a moment. Then his voice became much calmer. You're right. I was a little impulsive. Just now, When he sensed that this venerable one instrument didn't have an artifact soul, he was too excited and didn't think too much. But after listening to Chu Liyue's words, he thought carefully and felt that it made sense. Although this venerable one instrument is extremely rare, but just do as you think, Taizu comforted. It wasn't that he didn't have any regrets. Even he had only heard of the Honorable Master Divine Weapon in legends. Now that such a rare treasure was in front of her, Chu Liyue chose to give it up. With her intelligence, she would know what this meant. You are the pride of the Shangguan family. Taizu sighed with emotion. With such a temperament, what would she have to worry about in the future? Chu Liyue also smiled. Thank you, Taizu, for your praise. Then I'll take it back first. At this moment, Dumpling had already flown to the side of the light ball. Chu Liyue jumped down. She didn't know how it came out just now, so Chu Liyue wanted to try to get it back into the Qianquan ring. However, at this moment, the golden lightning suddenly approached. Die! In an instant, Chu Liyue's hair stood on end. Countless experiences wandering on the edge of life and death had already forged her instincts. She turned around without any hesitation. Jean Lei's fist, which was burning with the power of bloodline, was already in front of her. Chu Liyue raised her sword. The divine power in her dantian suddenly surged out. Boom! The long yuan sword suddenly exploded with a powerful aura. The golden lightning shocked Jean Lei. Divine power? Could this young man really be a god-level expert? He didn't have time to think too much and attacked with all his might. The reason why he dared to fight Chu Liyue with his bare hands was that his fist was already covered with a layer of scales. Although he had yet to completely forge his own divine body, he had already finished forming this hand. In other words, the power of this punch was comparable to a real divine body. Therefore, Jean Lei was very confident. Clang! The long yuan sword and Jean Lei's fist collided. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1198. After a short moment of dead silence, an intense pain came from his hand. The expression on Jean Lei's face instantly froze. Chi! The sound of a sharp sword piercing through flesh was heard, making one's teeth ache. Jean Lei could even feel the sharp tip of the sword rubbing against his bones. A trace of panic finally appeared in his eyes, and he quickly retreated. But how could it be so easy to come and go as one wished? Chu Liyue stared at him coldly, her eyes sharp and cold. At the same time, she held the sword tightly and pushed forward again. Helpless, Jean Lei could only change his fist into a palm and forcefully grab the sword blade. Without any hesitation, another large piece of flesh was scraped off. Fresh blood kept dripping from his hand, flowing down the black blade of the long yuan sword. The intense pain caused his face to turn pale. The next moment he clenched his teeth, grabbed the long yuan sword, and threw it out fiercely. Although Jean Lei was already at the end of his rope, he was still a god-level expert. A starving camel was still bigger than a horse. Chu Liyue used her fastest speed to mobilize the godly power in her body, and gave Jean Lei this blow. But in many aspects, she was still inferior to him. For example, Jean Lei, who was in a state of madness, threw Chu Liyue out of balance in an instant. Her body was thrown to the side. A ray of golden light flew over quickly, and a gentle and strong force supported her, allowing Chu Liyue to quickly stabilize her body. But at this moment, a soft sound of collision suddenly fell into her ears. Chu Liyue instinctively turned her head to look. It turned out that after she was thrown out, the long yuan sword that she was holding had accidentally knocked into the ball of light beside her in the process of struggling. The tip of the sword had pierced into the ball of light by about an inch. That sound was produced when the tip of the long yuan sword came into contact with the sword inside. It was crisp, clean, and pleasing to the ear. Just by hearing it, one could tell that it was definitely a peerless sword. If it was any other time, Chu Liyue would be very happy to hear this sound and see this treasure. It was even better to have a chance to observe it closely. But at this moment, her heart suddenly jumped. The words that Taizu said just now suddenly appeared in her mind. That venerable divine weapon did not have a soul. Chu Luiyue hurriedly tried to pull back the long yuan sword. But when she tried, she realized that the long yuan sword seemed to be sucked onto the sword. It was motionless. At the same time, she could clearly feel that something was gushing out from the long yuan sword and continuously entering the sword. As the long yuan sword's owner, Chu Luiyue knew what it was. Sword soul. The accumulated energy within the long yuan sword began to frantically transfer. This time, Chu Luiyue was really shocked. She did not expect such a mistake. She increased her strength, wanting to take back the long yuan sword. But it was all in vain. The sword in the ball of light was extremely powerful. It was as if he was crazily plundering the long yuan sword. The others did not notice the situation on Chu Luiyue's side. Jin Lei saw that Chu Luiyue stood there motionless, after barely managing to stand. He thought that she had been beaten silly, and planned to follow up with another attack. However, as soon as he took a step forward, he suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. He stiffened his neck and looked down. An extremely thin golden line swayed gently in midair. There was a drop of blood on it. It was dark red. Great panic surged in his heart. He turned his gaze and saw that half of his calf had been silently cut off. He didn't even hear the sound of his bones breaking, because all of this had happened too quickly. The next moment, that half of his calf suddenly fell under his gaze. He raised his head in horror, and saw that Rong Xiu was already not far away from him. It was only because he had focused all his attention on the battle with Chu Luiyue that he did not notice. Rong Xiu floated in the air, and his noble face looked as if it was covered in snow. His pair of deep eyes were like a 1,000-year-old lake, and one look was enough to freeze a person. That was a strong murderous intent. He had one hand behind his back, and the other hand was wrapped around a golden line. It was the line that had cut off Jin Lei's calf. Jin Lei's face was pale, and his cracked lips trembled. Rong Xiu's slender fingers moved slightly. The golden thread instantly transformed into countless sharp blades of light, and flew toward the golden lightning. No! Jin Lei sensed danger, and was about to beg for mercy when he felt a chill in his throat. A gush of warm blood suddenly spurted out. It was his throat that had been cut off. Jin Lei raised his hand in a panic, and wanted to cover the wound on his throat. But halfway through, he realized that his hand had fallen off. Then it was his forearm and upper arm. Piercing pain came from all over his body. He opened his mouth, but only the sound of the wind could be heard. He knew that his body was gradually disintegrating. He could even feel the blood in his body gushing out, and it was quickly cooling down. Jin Lei widened his eyes and stared fixedly at Rong Xiu. However, his eyeballs exploded the next moment. Annihilation silent. Countless people were watching this hellish scene, their hearts and minds trembling. The so-called death by 1,000 cuts was nothing more than this. When they looked at Rong Xiu again, many people's state of mind changed. He used such a cruel method to kill him, but his expression was so calm and indifferent. This man was really too scary. But the next moment, they saw an even more shocking scene. The young man standing next to the light ball suddenly fainted. The moment he fell, Rong Xiu went to his side and picked him up by the waist. Digression. Those who are fighting for the star of the monthly votes and star of the recommendation votes, please join the group as soon as possible to verify. Currently, the maximum number of monthly votes is 56 times 2. The star of the commentary vote is still pending. There are only 2 days left. Finally, the release time is October 13th at dawn. Raise the monthly votes. Countdown to release. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.